out of Akron, Ohio, representing Team Popping the Boys, the headline god, Jeremy Lambert, and his co-host, speaking out of Atlanta, Georgia, representing more than one royal family, the king of indie viewing, Steven Jensen. And this is the Spotlight on Fightful.
Hey everybody, welcome to Spotlight on Fightful. I am Steven Jensen. I am joined today by a special guest, kind of the utility guy here at Fightful. When we need a fill-in for Jeremy Lambert, SP3 is usually my go-to guy. Y'all know us from Degrassi Dudes together on Fightful Overbooked as well. And we're on the top of the show. Before we talk to SP3 a little bit, I do want to make an announcement for anybody who may have missed it. The reason, of course, that Jeremy is not here today. His father passed away this other day, and obviously our thoughts are with Jeremy. Me and SP3 both. I don't know if you had ever met him previously. I know I hadn't, but I got to meet Jeremy's dad at Jeremy's wedding, last year, and he seemed like a really, really great guy. And I know it's something that Jeremy's been making a lot of trips out to him, and it's been rough. I know, like in recent times, and as someone who's lost a family member in the past, I there's no real words that I can say that they're going to help anything. Probably, I just want y'all to know, as like a community here at Fightful, Jeremy does a lot for a lot of us. If it wasn't for him, this show wouldn't exist. And I just want y'all to just kind of have his thoughts, and whatever y'all do as far as like spiritually, prayers, like anything that kind of helps, shoot it over to Jeremy, because I'm sure he could use it right now.
Yes, much love to Jeremy and his family. Prayers, love, support to everyone in the family. And his dad was so cool, and chopped it up with me and Jeremy and the rest of us that were at Jeremy's wedding. So Jensen, got to know him. I got to know him. So definitely love and support to Jeremy, who's like one of my best friends in this whole community, and such a kind, hardworking individual. And his dad's very proud of the man that he is today. So send that love toward Jeremy right now. Yes,
absolutely. And thank everybody. Thank y'all to everybody who's here early today with us. We're starting at 8:40, kind of technically. Normally this is a 9:30 show. This is the third week in a row that we've done like an 8:30 start time for various reasons. The reason we're early today, and kind of with no heads up, so sorry, but I didn't kind of get this out there earlier to y'all that we were going to be starting early. But basically what it comes down to is I still have my shoot job at 11, so I wanted to make sure I was going to be here so we could still run an interview for y'all. Y'all will be hearing from Carmen Michael. That's going to be coming up on right around 10 a.m. So Carmen Michael from New South, and really all over the place. He's killing it all in the Southeast, but really everywhere as a ring announcer, commentator. He's a really, really nice guy, and it's a really good conversation. I think you guys are going to really enjoy. It's about 40 minutes long, and you'll be hearing that around 10 a.m., maybe 10 a.m. Eastern time, right here on the show. Outside of that, we have a lot of great stuff to talk about. We got, our regular topics, but they're pretty stacked this week. There's a lot of big stuff going on this week in wrestling. Before we get into all that, SP3, anything else that you want to throw out there or talk about or say before we talk about the wrestler topics?
Well, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate anytime, I'm called into service here on Fightful. I appreciate being the utility player. I've called myself the Roderick Strong / Angelo Dawkins / Aaliyah of Fightful Overbook, because Sean Ross Sapp and Jimmy Van's never going to call me up to the main roster. I'll be on the developmental brand for a long time. So anytime I get a guest spot on Main Event, I'm always happy to be here, or I could job out to Jensen on Monday Night Raw. I'm always happy to be here on the Spotlight and on the main channel.
Well, we love having you, man. And, you're the first guy hit up about doing this. And, I'm happy you're available. So we got some good stuff to talk about. And without kind of any further ado, I don't think there's anything else to really deep dive into before we talk about the wrestling stuff. Let me hit one of these bumpers and we will jump right into it. Gotta make sure to hit the right one, because Jeremy's added so many of these. And I want to make sure because obviously the first topic we're gonna start it off right with this guy right here.
I'm old and I'm fucking tired, and I work with fucking children. I'm tired of wrestling these kids that think they know everything.
So our first AEW spotlight today is the official in-ring return of CM Punk. We knew this was happening, obviously. Me and Jeremy talked about it at length last week, and everybody across the wrestling world has been talking about this, for really, for months and months and months at this point. But, as of last week, we found out that CM Punk's going to return at Collision in Chicago. And we now know officially that the main event of the show is going to include CM Punk. We're going to have Punk and FTR taking on Switchblade, Juice Robinson, and Samoa Joe. SP3, how do you feel about this matchup being announced? Obviously, CM Punk wrestling Chicago was pretty obvious it was going to happen, but we didn't know for sure until, with CM Punk especially, we don't know for sure until these things are announced. And there was a lot of heavy rumors about CM Punk and Samoa Joe one-on-one, which I imagine we could still probably get after this. They'll probably tease us here with the with the trios match. But that was really my one thing about this was I was like, I could see them maybe wanting to ease Punk in with the trios match instead of like a big one-on-one match. But I did expect Samoa Joe and CM Punk, some sort of version of that based on kind of what we've been hearing. What are your thoughts on kind of where we're at with CM Punk and the return match?
Yeah, I'm like you. I kind of think it makes sense to ease Punk back in with a trios matchup just to see where he is, where he doesn't have to do a lot of the work involved in the matchup. And it also, helps out with teasing the potential bigger matchups for CM Punk in the future, whether that's against Switchblade Jay White, whether that's against Samoa Joe. I think that the Joe Punk matchup was probably the best possible main event for the first Collision. Like, I understand if there's some people like, oh, it's an all-star tag team, this is not the big time matchup that the Dynamites usually have, that you're going to attract people for that first episode of Collision. But you have a lot of star power in this, and it puts Switchblade Jay White in a higher position, because I, like many people on social media and doing analysts and reviewing shows, have been very critical of how Tony Khan has booked Switchblade Jay White in his first 2 months with the company. I feel like you got a main eventer, a guy that headlined the Tokyo Dome this year, and you've been treating him like an upper mid-carder to mid-carder at best since he came into the company. But
Sorry, yeah. I wanted your quick thoughts because I don't want to forget about this. How do you feel about him versus Ricky Starks last night? Because Ricky Starks had him dead to rights, and then it was just like the ref bump, which is what saved him, which kind of to prove your point even more.
Yeah, it was like they couldn't just have him win clean against Ricky Starks. They had to set some other stuff up, like the ref bump and the guns coming in, hitting 310 to Yuma. Although I think I'm maybe in the minority here. I think that the guns with the Bullet Club, guns, bullets,
right,
makes a whole lot of sense, because also it's the fact that Switchblade Jay White, and you saw it last week with the in-ring promo, which I thought was another booking malpractice, that it took him 2 months to give Jay White a live in-ring promo, when his whole thing that made him the hot free agent that WWE wanted is because he was the rare guy outside of WWE that was a great character and a great in-ring promo, and it took him 2 months to give him an in-ring promo. So I was just like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Why are we doing all these, backstage pre-tapes when Jay White should be speaking in front of the fans? And you saw how well that came across last week, but it's also to the point where I saw that promo last week, I was like, he's just so cool. I don't see how people are gonna boo him for that long if they want him to be a top heel. But putting the guns with the Bullet Club Gold, I think, would be the right move. Like, I slept on it, I thought about it, like many people. I thought it was a flat finish to what was a really good matchup between Ricky Starks and Switchblade because of the ref bump and everything. But as I slept on it and thought about it, I think it is the right move to make sure Bullet Club Gold gets some heat. But as far as like the 6-man tag, I think that it's a wise decision to ease Punk back in, and then it saves the Punk versus Joe match for potentially maybe London for Wembley Stadium. I personally, we had Andrew Zarian on In the Weeds yesterday with me and Joel Pearl, and he said he already heard what the main event was, and I legitimately called 5 out of the 6 players in this matchup. My idea was to do CMFTR versus Bullet Club Gold with Kenta, because that plays into, you could potentially do Punk versus Kenta at Forbidden Door, but I wouldn't even mind that being the matchup for Forbidden Door, because that fits the mold on what we got a lot of the matches last year, where it was like one or two New Japan people in there with AEW, and they just said it's a Forbidden Door match. So that would have fit the build as well if you want to continue to ease Punk into this whole thing. But I think that, you know, putting Joe in there is playing into the fact that that's going to be the main event feud on Collision.
Yeah, I'm with you. How do you think this affects like Ring of Honor with Samoa Joe? Because I also feel like I mean, obviously the bigger money and like way more people are going to see Samoa Joe versus CM Punk and AEW, like obviously. But like, there's something in the back of my mind. It's like, man, if they could get CM Punk in like one big Ring of Honor pay-per-view, like if they do CM Punk Samoa Joe and on something like that, like especially, which once again, I don't think you want to. I don't want to sound harsh by saying this. You don't want to like waste it on Ring of Honor if you could like sell out, you know, or it's going to be a part of like a sellout Wembley Stadium or something like that. I understand the business differences there, but with CM Punk coming back, like I really do want to see him as a part of the Ring of Honor brand at least a couple times. Like, I mean, with this history there, and I also love that Jeremy Padour from Jazzwares, he's been putting out teasers about Ring of Honor action figures coming out soon. It's like, so I feel like Ring of Honor is going to get more and more kind of spotlight going forward. I think they're doing really good, by the way, with like kind of the position that they've found themselves in the wrestling landscape. Like they've actually found a space that works well for them, being kind of the in-between between AEW, the indies, and like really between the indies and AEW is kind of like a good in-between. And it's a good, I shouldn't even call it an in-between. It's like a destination for a lot of wrestlers. Like I've actually talked to quite a few wrestlers that are currently unsigned that have flat out told me, like, I'd rather get signed to ROH than AEW. Like, I've always loved Ring of Honor. Like, I've grown up a Ring of Honor fan. I've always wanted to work in Ring of Honor. Like, and they're not like, I wouldn't take an AEW contract. They're not, you know, they're not saying that, but they're saying, like, if it came down to it and someone offered me an ROH contract, I'm not sitting there, like, holding out for something better. Like, I've always wanted to work for Ring of Honor, you know? So, like, that's just something that's been in the back of my mind, too, is, like, with CM Punk coming back, I would like to see him involved in Ring of Honor to some degree, especially because we see Samoa Joe so heavily involved in that brand.
I think slowly but surely, what you're going to hear more and more from the independent stars is them start talking about Ring of Honor the same way 5-6 years ago, independent stars talked about NXT, where they weren't necessarily, you know, of course, WWE was always the big dream for a lot of the independent stars, but a lot of the independent stars wanted to start off in NXT because they were creating that buzz. They were like the hot kind of super indie fed at that time, like 6-7 years ago. And people wanted to start there before they even get to the WWE main roster. And I think that's going to be what it's similar kind of works for Ring of Honor. I would say, I think the way to kind of bring everything together where you're helping out Collision and helping out Ring of Honor is if this is a slow burn type of feud between Samoa Joe and CM Punk. I don't know how they can do that because as been established in various reports, the ticket sales for a lot of the collisions after Chicago have been very slow moving. So you're going to have to book some big matches there. And I don't know if you segue kind of big matches per se with just Punk doing singles matches, whether it's against Juice Robinson and, you know, guys like that on that level. You might have to do a Samoa Joe versus CM Punk matchup on an episode of Collision. You never know. You can't save it for the pay-per-view maybe, but if they can and make it a slow build, I would love for Punk to do Joe to do a big beatdown segment on Punk, like say in July, and then that segues into CM Punk just showing up at Death Before Dishonor, maybe as a surprise to interfere and distract Samoa Joe, and that leads to Mark Briscoe, who I think is the most likely and should be the next Ring of Honor television champion, and that could be your way to protect Joe, where he's distracted by Punk and he loses the ROH TV title, so then he's free to kind of just focus on the Punk feud on Saturdays.
I like that. All of that would make sense if it was presented that way. And I also want to mention something that you just touched on briefly too about the Collision ticket sales. I know that's been kind of a talking point on Twitter that I've noticed. People mentioning, well, yeah, of course, like the Chicago show is going to kill it, and they have CM Punk and everything. But like after that, things we don't really know. I will say, and people know my view on a lot of my views on CM Punk. I don't particularly love the guy, but like, I'm not one of these people that's saying he should never return. Like he's back. It is what it is. And I think that it's going to be really good television. At the very least, it's incredibly interesting at the very least. But I want to keep it real and get, I will say, like, I don't think that CM Punk is to blame for, like, if there are low ticket sales going forward for Collision. Like, you can put some of that on Punk because he's being brought in literally to be a draw. Like, the only reason to bring CM Punk back at this point, in my opinion, is the business side. Like, because he sells tickets, or he's supposed to be selling tickets. He sells merchandise. He's very famous. That's why he's being brought back. And that's why Tony Khan, a big reason I'm sure why Tony Khan has kind of put up with and handled the situation the way that he has. I feel like if this was pretty much any performer that wasn't CM Punk or maybe like the Elite, I don't think that you bend over backwards like this for somebody, create new shows and all this stuff that's happened. Now that said, it's on AEW. Like, it's on Tony Khan and AEW to, like, you can't just rely on CM Punk as, like, Collision sales aren't going great, so, like, it's on CM Punk. And I'm not saying that's what the company's saying, but this fan base kind of is. And we got to be honest about that too. Like, that's on AEW. Like, and that's one of the fears I have about CM Punk's return is, like, if it doesn't go well or he gets injured again or whatever happens, to where he might not be on the show long. I have no idea. I'm hoping, because I love AEW, I'm hoping Punk is healthy mentally and physically. He comes out, he just kills it, and we get just an awesome, like, next, like, 3 years or whatever out of Punk. Like, that's honestly what I want. I don't want to sit here and be bitter about it. We're at where we're at with everything. But it just needs to be really clear that, like, even if you're the biggest CM Punk hater in the world, you can't put low ticket sales going forward on just him, because, like, he's one guy at the end of the day. Like, they have this whole company and this whole brand, and they're pretty much doing like a soft brand split, it feels like, with Collision and all this. So just want to throw that out there too. I just seen a lot of people kind of blaming Punk, and I would agree if this was Chicago. Like, if they weren't doing well selling tickets to Chicago right now with all this announced, then I'd be like, okay, there's like an actual real problem with that, because even the Chicago crowd isn't interested in Punk. Like, that would be a real problem. But I think it's going to be on them with the writing. And would you agree or disagree? I know initially they're going to try to run Punk in as a baby face, but, like, I feel like he has to turn heel soon.
Yeah, they have to eventually go that route, and what they need to do is kind of ease Punk back in, and it's gonna be on Tony Khan 100% if we never get this CM Punk FDR versus the Elite or CM Punk versus Kenny Omega, because those are the biggest possible matchups. If you're not even thinking of that as an option, then you shouldn't be the booker of this company if you're Tony Khan. Because right. I know that everything is very, testy right now, and you're doing the soft brand split to keep everybody separated, but it should be kind of a cooling down period of bringing Punk in, seeing how he interacts with the locker room on Collision, and then eventually you want to have these guys sit in a room and find out how you can do that, and that's the best way for Punk to make that transition into being a heel, because he's going to be the heel against the guys that basically created this company. Yeah. And he's come in and he's run roughshod, and he had all those personal things to say, and there's so much real life animosity that they can take advantage of, and that will be the type of program what the Bloodline storyline is for WWE. It's a program where the rising tide lifts all ships, where WWE, I'll be honest with you, when I watch SmackDown a lot, it's the Bloodline and everybody else. It's right. Diana Ross and the Pimps. That's what it is. That's what it is a lot of times with WWE. And I would even argue at some point it was the Bloodline was the black band playing the music on the Titanic. Everything's going down behind them, but we're distracted because this music is really, really good. So it can be like that if they do it right with Punk and the Elite. That can be the rising tide that causes more ticket sales to happen for Collision, causes more ticket sales for Dynamite, where the last couple of weeks of Dynamite haven't sold that well and wasn't that filled up, wasn't sold out. They can get all these ticket sales that they need. They can really kind of rev things up for what should be the biggest summer of AEW's entire existence, but they have to eventually kind of broach the topic of CM Punk and the Elite having a program. And I definitely agree with you 100%. The people that are just putting the Collision lack of ticket sales on CM Punk is very disingenuous. It's very much people that have an issue with CM Punk and want to point the finger to him. Or you have on the other side of the spectrum the people that are just AEW's in the mud type of things. Right. And it's scorch earth every time something goes wrong for AEW. Oh, I told you they're a t-shirt company. Those type of people, which I don't listen to either one of those sides. I kind of stay in the middle ground where I can see everything from each side of the perspective.
Yeah, I'm with you. And also, you know, as you mentioned, this summer is massive for AEW. Like with the storylines that they have brewing and the people that they are probably going to be bringing in and the multiple shows and like All In and All Out being like back to back. And I mean, there's a lot going on. And I'm definitely not going to say this is make or break for AEW because it isn't. Like they're established. I think they're going to be fine either way. I mean, but I talked about this with Doug on Live Rounds a little bit on Tuesday, but I think that what CM Punk provides, I don't think that CM Punk is necessary to AEW. Like, in all honesty, I think AEW is fine with or without CM Punk. And I think it's been proven. These Dynamite shows and what they've been doing since he's been gone, I think AEW's television show is fantastic. Like, I don't think they need CM Punk. But what I do think is that having CM Punk, it does raise the ceiling of, like, potential of, like, how big the company can get in the short term. You know what I mean? It's like if you could only get this big without CM Punk, you can get this big with him. You know what I mean? Like it makes it the potential for your company to be bigger and better and more profitable and just have more boom and buzz and everything. I'm not ignorant to these things either. Like I understand it, and I've said it 1,000 times. CM Punk's on-screen run in AEW was awesome. Like the MJF feud especially was one of my favorite feuds like ever in wrestling, with the dog collar match and everything. The stuff with Eddie Kingston was incredible. I love the return with Darby. There's a lot more stuff. I mean, it was even cool to see him mix it up with Lee Moriarty. Like, it's just something I never thought I'd see before. You know, Lee Moriarty hit him with a Pepsi twist also during that match. I'll never forget that. It was just like, damn, this is like just stuff I never thought I'd see. So, if they can get this all worked out, like you said, Punk versus the Elite, that's or FTR and Punk rather versus the Elite, like that's the big money, and that would be the best thing that I could possibly put together. Hopefully they'll be able to get there at some point. I do want to read a super chat real quick. Anybody who sends super chats, we will make sure to put them up on the screen. We'll read them out. We really appreciate all the support, and we appreciate everyone who's just in the chat in general. I can't obviously respond to everything in the live chat, but I am keeping my eye on it, and I do really appreciate the feedback as we go through these topics. First super chat of the day comes from Tom Talks Rubbish, a good friend of ours. Says, thank you for being nice people. You all amazing. Oh, sorry, you're all amazing. Wouldn't be here. I can't read today. Wouldn't be where I am today without you guys. I'm so sorry, Tom. Thank you very much for the super chat, man. Tom is a great dude. You should check out his work. Yeah, we've both been interviewed by him, I believe. I know I have. I'm sure you have as well.
Yes, I think a few times. Tom is really great at what he does with his interviews. He asks very interesting questions, and he always does it with like content creators and people in the wrestling media space that you might not know about. I know I discovered a lot of different people from Tom's interviews, so definitely go out of your way to check out what he does. His work is really good.
Yes, very good guy, Tom. And like Tom, if y'all send super chats, we appreciate that. We'll make sure to address all of them. And please hit the like button and the subscribe button. We'd appreciate it, especially on a day like today where, a lot of people probably don't even know we're live at the moment. So we appreciate just anyone who's here early with us, kind of on late notice and with like the change, kind of last minute with what's going on with Jeremy. And, I want to make this very clear, by the way. Not that I think anyone would even think otherwise, but I just want to make this really clear. I'm the kind of person where, like, when you're going through something like what Jeremy's going through, like, that's what's important. I try to make it really clear to him yesterday, like, don't do anything that has to do with the show. Don't even think about it. Like, I'll take care of everything. Just do what you got to do. Like, and that's how there are some things that are just so much more important than wrestling or media or whatever. And like, I just want to make that really clear for everyone. It was one of those things where when I found out about was, I've known for a while that Jeremy's been dealing with this with, like, I know his dad's been struggling for a minute. Like, we've known that, but the death was really sudden. It was something that, like, full disclosure, me and Jeremy were going to do an interview together and everything was looking good. And then, like, on a dime, it was like, hey man. And it was like, and I started hearing from his wife. I won't pull the curtain back too much. And it was like, so this all happened really quick for all of us. So like, we appreciate y'all as viewers for like tuning in and the non-announced early time. I appreciate SP3 for, filling in. But at the end of the day, what's most important is Jeremy just chilling and doing what he's got to do to get right. So I know there's more people in the chat now than when we started. I just want to let everybody know Jeremy is not here because his father did unfortunately pass away the other day. So all of our thoughts and everything. This whole show, it's even hard to do the show because that's in the back of my mind so much at the moment. But yeah, so just wanted everyone in the chat to know because there's more people in than when we started. Now that said, SP3, if as far as like the CM Punk stuff, is there anything you want to add with CM Punk? Because I do want to move on to the next AEW topic here in a second.
I'm really interested, and I'll ask you kind of what they're gonna do with CM Punk because he's coming back basically 8 days before Forbidden Door. So are they going to maybe announce something on like a Dynamite or a Rampage for him? Do you think that maybe we'll have someone like a Kenta? I think Kenta is the one that everybody's talking about on social media. And, I've heard you say it before that AEW is your favorite promotion. My favorite promotion is New Japan Pro Wrestling. I've never made that a secret. I do a podcast on it over on WrestleIn. I do coverage on it on the True Hill Heat YouTube channel that it doesn't always get the highest amount of views, but I do it because I love talking about New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I say that as a preference to say, this is not the Kenta from 2006. So the people that I feel like the people that are asking for a CM Punk and Kenta matchup are thinking of Kenta from 2006 and not the Kenta that has been basically just a slightly higher quality of matchup than Evil and Toriano. Like,
ooh, I didn't know it was like that.
Yeah,
I didn't know it was like that.
It's like that. If you watch New Japan Pro Wrestling, and I hope there are some fans of New Japan Pro Wrestling in the chat that can back me up on this. Kenta hasn't been, making waves with great matches as of late. When he's in Pro Wrestling Noah, he shows a little bit more. When he's in the independent scene, he shows a little bit more. But this ain't the Kenta that was having 5-star matches with Bryan Danielson when I first discovered him. This ain't the Kenta who made me watch Pro Wrestling Noah, and he was having 5-star classes with Kenta Kobashi, Masawa, and Marufuji. It ain't that guy. It's to a lesser extent. It is basically Kenta in the form of Hideo Itami. So people need to realize that before they are like begging, be like, oh, when's Kenta and Punk happening? Every time I see that on social media, I'm like, you don't watch New Japan.
Right, which is fair, which is very fair. I think that that's interesting you say that because a lot of people, this already did happen long enough ago that there are a lot of people that are newer fans that probably don't even really understand kind of what you're getting at with all that. Because for people who don't know, Kenta was like viewed as like pretty much the most dangerous guy in wrestling pre WWE. Like what he was doing in Noah, like you said, against those legends and his team with Marufuji as well. Yes. And like those guys were killing it. Then when he came to the States, that's when I started noticing him as well, having matches with guys like Danielson.
I discovered him when he went to Ring of Honor. When he went to Ring of Honor in 2006, that was when I was like really in. Like I discovered Ring of Honor through, ironically, the Samoa Joe and CM Punk series from 2004 into 2005. That really made me pay attention to Ring of Honor when I was just like 16 years old in high school, and I was getting very kind of diluted with everything wrestling because mainly it was just WWE at the time. The thing that made me a wrestling fan again was discovering CM Punk and Samoa Joe's trilogy in 2004, and then I followed Ring of Honor off and on, and then really got into it like 2006, and it was due to, you know, Marufuji and Kenta Kobashi coming over into Ring of Honor, mixing it up with the Samoa Joes of the world, the Bryan Danielsons of the world, the Nigel McGuinnesses, and that's what really kind of made me go to my first independent show at the end of 2006. The first show I ever went to was Final Battle 2006, and a lot of that was down to the first DVD I had from Ring of Honor was Glory by Honor 2006, with one of my favorite ROH matches of all time, Kenta versus Bryan Danielson for the Ring of Honor World Championship. And that's the thing. Like, I just feel like people are just so enamored with the fact that Punk used Go to Sleep, and they're like, oh, this is a match I've always wanted to see. And I'm just like, this ain't the match you thought you were going to see, though. That's the thing.
I think that's definitely I'm glad you're bringing that up, though, because like on paper, it makes a lot of sense to do Kenta versus Punk. But if Kenta's not operating that level, because I will say he is operating at a pretty high level based on what I've been seeing him do like outside of New Japan, but I haven't seen a ton of him on New Japan lately. I'll be completely honest. So it's one of those things where like, and people also need to understand, I won't go too deep into this, but to the level of like how big of a deal Kenta was before he signed with WWE, like they did a whole press conference in Japan where they brought in Hulk Hogan, and like they did this giant like red carpet, you know, we're signing the biggest kind of available Japanese star that there is to the WWE. And they, you know, slowly like they changed him over to Hideo Itami, and then I'll never forget him losing to Tyler Breeze with the spinning heel kick, or the whatever he called it, beauty shot. And I was like,
yes,
ooh, this is different. I remember thinking that because like Tyler Breeze was fine, especially for like the system. He worked really well for what NXT was. Like Tyler Breeze was a really successful NXT like project or whatever you want to call it. Especially like he got to wrestle Jushin Liger and stuff. Like Tyler Breeze was a big deal in NXT. It wasn't like a big deal, but I remember at the time that it happened, Breeze hadn't been like that well established, and Kenta was Kenta. And I remember him losing just straight up to the beauty shot in an NXT takeover, and I was like, ooh, they might not view Kenta kind of how I thought they did. Because then right around that time, people forget, at least if I remember correctly, I might have forgotten, Kenta in storyline was the one who brought Finn Balor in to fight off the Ascension, right?
Yep.
So
you're right.
And there was also
that was the era of them introducing the guys under their independent names, and then they would point to the Titantron, and it would always change. He would start out, he come out Kenta, he point to the Titantron, it was Hideo Itami. If Balor came in, it was Prince Devitt, and then it said Finn Balor. And I remember that era of NXT.
100%. And so. And then there was, others obviously that got signed around that time, like the big names like Steen and Generico and that kind of stuff. And like, so Kenta kind of got brought in as what looked like kind of the centerpiece. And he honestly, I can't remember if he or Generico signed first with the company. Generico did.
Yeah.
But
Generico had that rivalry with Claudio before they even came to WWE Network.
That's right.
Toyota Itami, those guys. It was just Zayn and Pac Neville at the time that were like signed before the WWE Network era, and then they added Itami, Balor, and Owens after.
Right, and that was and kind of my point is that it seemed like that Kenta was going to be like kind of the centerpiece of these signings, like even as it was happening, like when Kenta brought in Balor, it was a big deal. It was like, oh wow, now Prince Devitt's here. But that's also when I started to see that shift. I was like, oh, like they're bringing in like big stars from other countries now. Like Finn Balor, like Prince Devitt was a very big deal, obviously in Japan. So it was like, oh wait, so but Kenta was like the first real big one in my opinion. Obviously, Generico was huge for them to have him, but the landscape was just a lot different back then with like the distribution of like independent wrestling and what was going on in Noah. Like they had a ton of buzz at the time. And like, so anyway, it's different times, different perspectives, but The point is that I agree with you that Hideo Itami never really like reached anything close to what we expected in WWE, at least what I expected. At a certain point, he was just wrestling for like the cruiserweight title and on like 205 Live, and you're like, damn, like how did this even happen?
And that was considered an upgrade at that time. That was an
right.
upgrade for him. And he never even won the Cruiserweight Championship. I thought that was a foregone conclusion when he started working on 205 Live, and he never even made it to that title.
When I knew he was doomed was, this is unfair to say because it's once again, all this is in hindsight, but like when I think it was WrestleMania 31. Was that the one in California? Yeah, that was the one where Rollins won the title at the end of the show.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was the pay-per-view where they did the Andre Battle Royal or whatever, and Kenta just like came out like with the group. And I
remember that.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, they didn't even like mention that this guy's like even in the match. And I figured like his introduction to the WWE crowd was gonna be like a big deal, and it was literally nothing. And I was like, oh no, like they just see him differently. Like it is what it is. That said, as far as like Punk's a Punk match at Forbidden Door, I mean, on paper, once again, I get the want for a Kenta match, especially because Kenta's outspoken too about not liking that CM Punk has stolen his move. But I mean, there's a lot of good options. Like, who do you think would be do you think we get a singles match as Forbidden Door with Punk, or do you think it's another CM FTR match?
I could see it being a CM FTR match. That's the way I would do. If you want to bring Kenta in, the thing that makes sense is him join Bullet Club Gold against FTR, and then the matchup on Collision is basically to build to that, because it seems like they've been already started the build for Joe to have a different matchup at Forbidden Door with Zack Sabre Jr., the battle of the Island Boys, Joseph of the Samoas versus Zack of the Sheppies. Who's the better TV? Who's the better TV champion? They've been building that on Ring of Honor television for over the past month. So I would love for them to pay that off and to really kind of show that they have been building to this whole Forbidden Door pay-per-view for a while now. And I think that would be like a nice little dream matchup to have underneath the big major ones that we're going to talk about. And with Punk, I think you still got to ease Punk back into this whole fold, and CMFTR seems like the most logical way to do it, unless you want to do FTR versus Bishamon. But then you're once again going to be having, the title swap of an AEW star having a New Japan title, or a New Japan star having an AEW title. And that was kind of what a lot of people felt was one of the kind of setbacks with Forbidden Door, where, you didn't always have FTR over in Japan defending the championship. You haven't had Kenny Omega in Japan defending the IWGP US Championship. So I don't know what they're going to do with that regard. If you're going to do a singles match, someone else who I don't think is the same person that they were even like a year ago or a year and a half ago, but I would probably prefer that, since we were already supposed to get that, I would say Punk versus Tanahashi. Because Tanahashi still knows how to work. He still knows how to step up in these big spots. Despite him being a lot slower and his knees completely being ruined, he was able to have a great match with Will Ospreay at Resurgence just a month ago, just a few weeks ago, pretty much. He was able to have a great match. I bet, though, a lot down in quality from what we're used to with him, with Okada at Battle in the Valley this year. So he's had great matches this year. I think he can be someone that can have a great match with CM Punk, and he's not doing anything too flashy or too, off the wall that's going to make Punk look bad in comparison. So I think that would be all right, because Tanahashi has proven this year that he can have great matches. Kenta, in New Japan, he hasn't been able to do that. In Noah, he had a great matchup, but that was in a tag team format. I know in DEFY, he just won the DEFY championship, beating Nick Wayne. I didn't hear about the quality of that matchup, but I did hear that he used the usual Kenta shenanigans of a low blow to get the win.
Title belt. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit during the indie spotlight for sure.
Yeah, so I'm used to that. When I heard that was the result, I was like, okay, that makes sense. It's Kenta.
Yes.
So I think Tanahashi has proven this year he can have a great matchup. That's about what CM Punk was about when he was in AEW, having great matchup. It's about the story you tell in the ring. It's about psychology. It's about the selling, and Tanahashi is a master at all those things.
There you go. I agree with all of that. I think that both those scenarios make a lot of sense. Those are both good potential matchups and scenarios. Oh, those are all good, I should say, rather potential matchups and scenarios for Forbidden Door. Thank you again to Tom Tosh Rubbish. Thank you so much, man. Another super chat says my interview with Jimmy Van drops tomorrow. Y'all go check that out. Jimmy Van, of course, very important over here at Fightful.com. Other AEW spotlight. We had in my opinion, a really good back and forth segment last night between MJF and Adam Cole. I wasn't sure where it was heading when MJF came out to the ring last night and he started talking about how there was like no one left for him to wrestle. It kind of was like the gist of his promo was like, I've beaten everybody, like who's left kind of thing. And that led me to believe, I was like, oh wait, who from New Japan's about to come out here? Are they going to start building MJF's Forbidden Door match now? Because they've obviously announced some of the other Forbidden Door stuff that we're going to talk about here in just a moment. But I also, in the back of my mind, was like, Adam Cole clearly is being positioned as the number one contender coming off the Jericho feud and stuff. So when Adam Cole's music hit, it wasn't surprising. I was like, okay, so they are going to go to MJF versus Adam Cole next. Like I'm totally fine with that. This clearly was the direction. Let's do it. Like, I'm fine with that. I thought Adam Cole held his own really, really well in the microphone last night, which can be really hit or miss against a guy like MJF, because MJF, like, he's going to just destroy some people, but I think Adam Cole did really well. I thought they both did, for what it's worth. I thought they both came across, like, MJF came across like a dick, and Adam Cole came across like a dude who was out there able to defend himself, who was willing to fight MJF, and MJF looked like a coward, which is like the whole point. So how do you feel about, I guess, the segment last night, and then knowing that MJF versus Adam Cole is right around the corner, and then more importantly, after giving your thoughts on that, like, as I've seen both schools of thought on this. Like, there's people who believe MJF's, and there's people who believe both. I'm actually in the both categories here. I believe that MJF's title run needs to be longer, but I also think it's like really important Adam Cole wins the title if he's going to get another shot, because if they want to make him in the same kind of position as the Elite, as Hangman Page, like that, those kind of guys, he can't keep losing these big title matches and stuff, because he has had big opportunities. He won the Owen, which is a big deal, but it's different than winning the AEW World title, obviously. So SP3, where are your thoughts on that last night's segment, knowing that this is next? And do you think that Adam Cole needs to win this, or does MJF retain when this does happen?
I think that this was a wise decision to put Adam Cole against MJF, because the one thing that people were down about with the Four Pillars story was the fact that you had three guys who just really couldn't compete with MJF on the mic and didn't feel like top stars all the time that MJF was going against. With Adam Cole, you kind of check the box with both of that. He feels like a top star that's going against MJF a bit. He is not the same, viewed in the same light as he was in NXT or in Ring of Honor. And I love the fact that they addressed that in this promo, where basically MJF told them, in ROH, you was the man, homie. What happened to you? Like he hit him with the 50 line. I thought that was great. Like, he was like, I fell in love with you. And MJF is just so good at that, at just building his opponent up and then tearing them down little by little. Like, this is not the guy that's standing in front of me. So what happened? He said, you went from the Panama Playboy to the Panama Game Boy, and Britt Baker can't leave the house without your testicles in her purse. Like, I love that. I love all those things that MJF said, both to big up and praise and build up Adam Cole and make him feel like a worthy adversary for him. But I also love the stuff that he put, that he was basically a Twitter troll with everything he was saying, with the Britt Baker stuff, with, oh, what happened to your body used to look like a champion, and all that stuff. It just fits his character so much.
I love the line that when he said, the whole line about, and then the bell rings, and I was like, that was what he said to Karrion Kross on NXT. I was like, oh my god, he actually, like, those were deep cuts for hardcore fans, which is great for us seeing that stuff.
Yeah, because he kept doing that. He used 3 of Adam Cole's catchphrases where he was like, I saw you in Ring of Honor, I even saw your work in CZW, and then you went to Florida and you shocked the system.
Yep.
And he was like, you were the best champion in that promotion's history, and that, my friends, is undisputed. And then hit him with how do they make me look cool? They just ring the freaking bell. I love that he was just like needling him with the little lines, and I liked Cole's kind of response back, but I feel like MJF definitely won this round of back and forth. But I love Cole, coming back, saying that MJF is scared to fight, saying that Britt Baker could probably beat him up. He was like, the reason you talk about my body is my body of work, and you can't compete with that. And he was like, I would love for us to go backstage and pee in a cup and see who's natural at this stuff. So I loved his little comebacks for the babyface that he was. And I know there was people that were saying, oh, maybe it was a little bit too long, but I think it needed to be that long to create the narrative and everything. And I do agree with you that Adam Cole has had multiple attempts at the AEW World Championship. So this being probably going to be his 3rd chance to get the AEW World Championship, he is probably at that point where he needs to either win or not get a shot for a very, very long time. And I think AEW is addressing that in trying to make him look like a very credible challenger, despite the fact that he probably won't win, is the fact that they're doing the matchup, the Eliminator matchup next week. I was very surprised by that when they made that announcement at the end of the show. They're really trying to stack up this Washington, D.C. show because they're going to be in a bigger arena, 10,000 seater at the Capital One Arena. That's the arena that they first were in for the first ever Dynamite. I was there live for that. And I think that they're really kind of building this up with big matches. And the fact that they have this match on there, I think that Cole is either going to beat MJF outright, or they go to like a 20-minute, 30-minute time limit draw where he looks like he's the biggest challenge of MJF's title reign. And I think they can do it as a slow burn. I don't know if they're going to do it at Forbidden Door, because I don't think that kind of fits the Forbidden Door kind of
I feel the same
template.
way.
Yeah.
Right.
So I would love for them to do maybe something like Adam Cole and Sonata versus MJF and a challenger for New Japan. I think that would be, a way to further build it up. You can also give Adam Cole that win in a tag team matchup against MJF at Forbidden Door. And then you have more stuff to talk about for the next month and a half, 2 months before you get to Wembley Stadium, and then do Cole and MJF there. I would love for them to do it in that way. I think that this is going to be a longer program, but you need Adam Cole. It's very similar to where Christian was before his matchup with Kenny Omega at All Out 2021, where Christian needed that win against Kenny Omega to win the Impact World Championship to build him up and make him seem like a formidable challenge for Kenny Omega's title at All Out. And that helped him a lot. It still didn't prevent people from assuming that Kenny Omega was going to get the win, but it was a needed kind of point of the story to get him to the pay-per-view. So I think with Cole, he needs that, but I do see MJF winning in the long run.
I feel the same way, and I think that's probably the best route of doing it. I would have Adam Cole beat MJF in an Eliminator, because that also, and some people might not like the idea of that, and I get it. Like, trust me, because they've done a good job of protecting MJF, and like, you don't want to see your champion lose. I'm the kind of person where I don't like scenarios where like the U.S. champion loses their title and then they're immediately put in the world title mix and stuff like that. It seems counterproductive. It seems backwards to me. Yeah. And this is it would be kind of similar when, the champion loses a non-title match and you're like, well, damn, it kind of feels like the champion, like you shouldn't be like the champion anymore. Like they just got beat, So I get that. But AEW, to my knowledge, has anyone won an eliminator match that, like,
I think they had Penta and Eddie Kingston beat the Young Bucks.
That's right.
In Jacksonville before their first show back on the road at Road Rager in 2021. Other than that, though, as far as like the world title eliminator, I don't think they've really done the world champion losing in that fashion. And that's why I think that it might be time to do that, especially with the fact that MJF hasn't been pinned since Double or Nothing last year. He's going on he's over a full year of not being pinned in the ring. So I think it is time to create some doubt a little bit and show that somebody can beat him. And that will stop the whole kind of narrative that he's trying to spin as far as there's no competition for him. Now you have legitimate competition that has proven he can beat you.
Right. And I think that it's fine if Adam Cole beats MJF in an eliminator match, because like we just said, the company's been around for what, like 4 years at this point, and they maybe once since they've done any eliminators for like any of these titles has it's not a regular thing. It'd be different if it was like often we got eliminator matches and we were constantly seeing the champions lose non-title matches. That would be frustrating and confusing and probably hurt business in my opinion. But if it's happening once every 4 years or whatever, then it's like, okay, like that's the entire point of the match type, is sometimes the champion is going to lose, and that's how you create the new number one contender. Like that's, so I think it's totally fine if we go that route, especially depending on how they do it. And another thing with Adam Cole, and I give him a lot of credit for last night's back and forth with MJF, because it's granted, Cole's a professional. They're putting him in this spot for a reason. He's obviously incredibly talented, and they have a lot of faith in him as a heel or a babyface, obviously. But it's got to be so much more difficult being a babyface in that scenario, having to go back and forth with MJF, because MJF has free reign to say whatever he wants, basically. And you as a babyface have to keep it together. Like, you can't lose your cool to the point of like you also coming across like a heel, but you also have to be clever enough that you don't sound stupid going back and forth with him. But you also got to keep it clean enough. You know what I mean? It's like you got to ride a lot of fine lines as a babyface in that scenario, especially when you're going face to face with, I mean, MJF talked about stories on this show that like I can't even repeat, or on Dino that I can't even repeat on this show. Like the guy has done in kayfabe, this dude has done despicable things like in and outside of the wrestling ring. And Adam Cole has to be kind of the white meat babyface in this scenario, when most of Cole's success in his career has come as the MJF in this scenario. Like he's normally the despicable heel. So it's an interesting dynamic. And I'll say this, the only thing I don't like about Adam Cole, the only thing is the Panama Sunrise, because he does it in slow motion. That's the only thing about him that bothers me. Because like his moveset rules, he rules, his promos rule, his look rules, him with Britt is cool. Like he's a cool guy. He's a gamer. And honestly, I haven't talked to one person ever who said anything other than Adam Cole is like the nicest guy I've ever talked to. Yeah. So like, so but I like to throw a little critique out there every now and then, is, something that can make you a little bit better. Am I crazy for that? Because I feel like whenever he does the Panama Sunrise, it looks like he's barely making it over in that move. And I'm always like, it's tough when I've seen like Petey Williams do the move for like 2 decades and it's like crisp, and you're just like, yes, that's the one thing about Adam Cole.
And it's the fact that everybody does their Destroyer now, and it looks a whole lot better than the Panama Sunrise. I remember when he first started doing it, it looked cool because he did it from a different angle. He did the jump into it and it looked smooth, but especially after the Jericho match, where that was the worst Panama Sunrise he ever did.
Back bumps. He like goes out and like takes like a flipping back bump almost, and like his opponent has to like do the rest of it almost. This doesn't look right.
Yes. I think it's that, and that's another reason, bringing up the Jericho matchup at Double or Nothing. That's another reason that Adam Cole probably needs to beat MJF in this eliminator matchup, is because I don't think the Chris Jericho feud was as effective as AEW was hoping for, because the matchup at Double or Nothing didn't work out. And I've said this on my channel, and I'll say it here. I think they should have swapped it out. I think they should have done the mixed tag match at Double or Nothing and not involve Sabu at all into this whole thing.
Totally agree.
And they should have done the unsanctioned match last week on Dynamite.
Yeah, you're right. And the Sabu thing was just strange. Like, listen, I'm just like me and you are the same age. Like, we grew up ECW fans. Like, we're very aware and respect what Sabu is and what he means in wrestling. I mean, but like, and especially, and part of this too, honestly, isn't even Sabu's fault, because I've been led to believe that Kyle O'Reilly's returning like multiple weeks now, and like every time it isn't Kyle O'Reilly at this point, and like when it wound up being Sabu instead of Kyle, I was like, wait, why is Sabu involved in this? I was just thinking,
because if it wasn't gonna be Kyle, I was hoping for Bobby Fish.
Well, of course, yeah, one of those guys.
I had already booked my interview that's up on my channel now with Bobby Fish. So I was really hoping it was Bobby Fish so I could talk to him.
Oh, that would have boosted. Oh yeah, that would have boosted everything.
I was like, come on, that would have boosted me up. That would have been perfect. But it was Sabu, and it just it marked me out in the moment because, like you said, I'm a huge ECW fan. Like, I remember being 8 years old, staying up to 1 a.m. on watching an MSG here in New York, and that was like my thing, Sabu and all those guys from the ECW era. So it popped me in the moment. But then when we got to the show and you see him doing the chair joust with Chris Jericho, and then basically not even doing a splash off the top rope, he basically just fell off the top rope into the table above. It's just like, nah. Not for me.
Man, those were the days. You know, I remember back in the day, the like ECW would air on TNN, which at the time was the Nashville network, and that was before it turned into Spike TV, which a lot of people, once again, younger viewers, newer fans, might not even know about all this, which is crazy because that just shows how old we're getting. Because I feel like a lot of this stuff was just yesterday, but it was 25 years ago. But like, so ECW would air on the Nashville network, and then it would air like replays on like locally, like kind of syndicated, whatever you call it. So for you, is that what that was? The MSG network was like your kind of like your local middle of the night ECW reruns.
Yeah, that's where Hardcore TV used to come on, was MSG. And it's funny because MSG, the only wrestling we used to ever get on that was Madison Square Garden shows from WWF. So it was very funny that on that same channel, late night, 1 a.m., you would get the Hardcore TV. And that's how I discovered the Rob Van Dam, Sandman, Sabu, all those guys I discovered from watching Hardcore TV at like 8 years old, late night. And then when they showed up on like the WWF of the world, and then Sabu was on WCW for a while, it was like, oh snap, they made it to the big time. It was cool.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, I felt the same way. I remember like when like Hardcore Hack appeared on WCW. I was like, wait, what? Like, what? Are you kidding me? But I remember like ECW for me, the rerun shows and stuff would do. They were on this channel called Hot Atlanta, which was like a short-lived. People, I would love to know if anyone who's in the chat or anyone who watches the replay of this, please let me know in the comments. Does anyone have any recollection of this channel? Because it wasn't around for very long, and it would air. It was awesome though. It would air like they had like this programming block, which would be like, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong a little bit, but it would be like ECW, like Roller Jam with like Mark D'Amato and like those dudes.
I remember Roller Jam.
There was a strip poker show where like as a teenager, it was basically the equivalent of watching like the Howard Stern show, where like they nothing, like you didn't really actually see anything, but like it was just the fact that like it was on TV and like you're a teenager and like the internet wasn't what it is now, you know, and you're just like that, like, so you're up in the middle of the night watching people basically just strip into bikinis. Like, it's really no big deal, you know, but like, but, you know, it's like, it was like those kind of shows. It was like this. I mean, that was like the late night block with like strip poker, Roller Jam, ECW. You know, it was like those kind of shows. They might have even aired like reruns of like Wild on E with Brooke. What was her name? Brooke. Oh man, she was big for a while. She was gorgeous. Some Brooke Burke maybe was her name. But there was a show called Wild on E, and she was the host of it. She'd walk around like on the beach and like, you know, it was like, anyway, this was a totally different time. But it was just one of those things where that I always remember that kind of stuff, because ECW was such like an underground thing, even though it was on TNN. TNN at that time really wasn't a big deal. And then people also forget that ECW got totally screwed, because when TNN rebranded to Spike, and during that transition, everything, when they got WWE programming, that's when ECW was done. because they
were still TNN when
they were
when,
at that before, right?
Right before.
But they had changed to the national network. They got from the national network to the national network, and then they
to the
were gonna
national
switch.
network, and then like a year into it being on, or probably like 2 years, because I remember it closer becoming Spike when the first brand split happened, and they got back onto TNN. They went on TNN for the first time in like 2000, because I remember it was like summer of 2000. The Rock was the WWF champion, and like he kicked off the show for that first episode on TNN. So it was like a year and a half or so before they became Spike.
Yes. So those were the days, man. That was a wild time, because that was ECW. Like basically, Spike TV made the decision. They were like, we have WWE now. Why would we need ECW? And then within like months, ECW was absorbed by the WWE and everything.
Remember the Paul Heyman rants on the last few episodes?
Yeah, a classic. And it's wild that like he's been in the WWE for so long, like since then, like it's just wild how things happen. We'll move on to our next topic here. But me and the SP3 are both it sounds like we're both interested in looking forward to Adam Cole versus MJF. And I think we both think it's a good idea that I'm fine with Adam Cole winning an eliminator match and beating MJF, but I do think MJF will ultimately retain when they have their one-on-one match of the title. Great. Moving on, let's go to this spotlight.
Our product is what it is. We're going straight up the middle.
So we're going to go to the other spotlights, mainly because we had some huge match announcements for Forbidden Door 2. And with you being such a big New Japan fan, especially, this was perfect timing for you to be on the show this week to talk about this. The two matches that I'm talking about, of course, is the rematch between Kenny Omega and Okada. That's going to be
Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay. This is a rematch, of course. Kenny Omega won the original running back at Forbidden Door. Very much looking forward to that. And then, of course, the other one, which was why I got this all mixed up, we have Bryan Danielson versus Okada, which we have never seen, which is like a legitimate dream match. Yes. So, I want kind of more your thoughts on Danielson versus Okada, because we haven't seen it before. But I will throw this out there. Omega. I keep wanting to say Okada and Omega because I know that's going to they're going to be teaming up soon. Like this is all blending together. But obviously I'm very happy to see Omega versus Ospreay, that's happening again, because the original was a classic. We knew we were going to get multiple matches, and it makes sense that the rematch would happen at Forbidden Door. But man, when I saw that video package, that little kind of vignette promo thing that Danielson did out in the desert, and that line was so savage at the end, where he was like, I'm gonna botch it, I'm sure, but he's like Rainmaker, like, out here, I'm gonna bring you to the desert where there is no rain. And I was like, oh dude, that is such a good, where it's like, there ain't no rain out here, whatever he said. I was like, dude, that is a great line, especially because like only someone like Danielson could deliver something kind of that corny and on the nose, and it hit so perfect, So yeah, how do you feel about all this? Obviously the rematch is huge. The dream match is huge as well. And yeah, kind of where you at with Forbidden Door 2 shaping up right now.
I thought the Bryan Danielson challenge was so well done in every way, because it came out as a surprise due to what happened at Resurgence and what happened at Dominion. It led many people, including myself, to believe we were going to get Okada versus Moxley at Forbidden Door, because they had that kind of electric chemistry with one another at Resurgence in Long Beach, and then they were involved in the Dominion matchup. But then for Moxley to kind of do the introduction and say, the guys in the ring, Tanahashi, Ishii, and Okada, they call you guys the best wrestlers in the world, but we know who the best wrestler in the world is. We train with the best wrestler in the world, and he has a message. And then to hear Bryan's whole story, he gave you the story outright. For people that were like, where's the story? Where's the story? He gave you the story in the promo. He said for 10 years, he's been hearing about you and the people calling you the best wrestler in the world. And he even heard him say that he wanted to wrestle him. And he says, they call you the Rainmaker. Well, when you're in the ring with me, you're in the desert and there ain't no rain. But drop the mic right there. Drop the mic. This is about who is the best wrestler in the world. And you have, this is like my ultimate dream match. You have my favorite wrestler of probably ever. My favorite wrestler ever is Bryan Danielson. And my favorite wrestler from Japan is Kazuchika Okada. Okada versus Dragon is a must watch in every single way. It doesn't need any story, but they're still giving you a story. That's why I saw some criticism for Dynamite last night. Like, oh, where was the Forbidden Door build? You had Chaos versus Blackpool Combat Club with Bryan Danielson on the commentary the whole time, bigging up the matchup the whole time. That's the build. You had the video package. That's the build. Some people didn't watch Dominion, unlike me, that woke up at 3 a.m. in the morning to watch the show live. Some people didn't watch it. So you have to do the vignette. You have to have Dragon kind of emphasize what's going on. And for people that were like, oh, there was only one New Japan wrestler on the show, and it was Rocky Romero. Genius. New Japan has a huge show tomorrow all together again, where it's continuing this whole era of collaboration. That's been my kind of key talking point when it comes to New Japan this year. They did the Wrestle Kingdom 2 event in January with Pro Wrestling Noah. They did the All-Star Junior Festival with all the Japanese promotions, Dragon Gate, DDT, All Japan, Pro Wrestling Noah back in March. They did, they've done stuff with AEW, had AEW talent on various different shows that they've had. They got Forbidden Door coming up later this month. And then All Together again is tomorrow, their big show with All Japan and Pro Wrestling Noah, where a majority of the top stars are going to be on that show. There's no way for them to be on Dynamite this week. So calm your panties down, relax. We'll get the New Japan talent next week or the week after, and it doesn't really matter because they've already started the build a lot better than how the build was last year.
Well, so we got even with no build, if you just watched Forbidden Door last year or even know about Forbidden Door, you don't even need build. It was the best pay-per-view of the year last year. It's New Japan versus AEW. It sells itself.
Exactly. And you have two matches where you don't really need to care much about the other matches on this card, because these two matches are going to sell it regardless. You have two matches that the bar for them is 5 stars. Yes, like if it gets above that, and if it exceeds expectations, if it gets below 5 stars, it under-delivered. Like that is the bar for these two matches, where Bryan Danielson has had the greatest Iron Man match that I ever seen against MJF just 2 months ago, and everybody's been wondering, why has he kind of been in bubble wrap? Why has he not been wrestling? Why was he like pretty much a non-factor in Anarchy in the Arena? As soon as that video package happened, I was like, okay, that's why. That's why right there. They were like, we're going to make sure you have Forbidden Door this year because we're giving you the biggest possible match you can ask for with Kazuchika Okada and then Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay. That's a story, and the vignette kind of told the story very well. Just show highlights of their match of the year candidate, where even though I think MJF and Bryan Danielson had the greatest Iron Man match of all time this year, it still is probably second place to Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay at Wrestle Kingdom. And now we get part 2. And I love how things are shaping up for us to get one of the greatest trilogies of all time in 1 year, where you have Ospreay and Omega 1 in their second homes of Japan. You got Ospreay Omega 2 in Kenny's home of Canada. And now you have the potential, whatever happens in this matchup, whether it's Ospreay getting his win back or Kenny going 2-0 this year, you got Ospreay and Omega 3 right there for you to revisit in Wembley Stadium in Ospreay's home of the UK. So it just makes it a beautifully told story altogether. And these two matches, they don't really need to do much else than just continue to hype this, continue the commentary telling us why these matches are important. Hopefully we could get a promo from Kenny Omega in the weeks to come, but we don't need Ospreay or Okada to even show up on Dynamite without feeling the hype of what these two matches are going to mean to AEW and New Japan.
Yes, yeah, I couldn't say that better myself, man. I'm hyped for it. I'm glad that they announced those two matches. Like I said, the whole thing sells itself. I mean, if you, and this isn't one of those, like, this isn't to spark a debate or anything, but I say this about AEW pay-per-view. I say this about a few different wrestling promotions and shows, to be fair, not just AEW, but if you consider yourself a pro wrestling fan, it's a disservice if you don't watch Forbidden Door. Like, you know, and you don't have to be, you can be the biggest, WWE fanboy of all time. You can even love just sports entertainment. You might not have any interest in New Japan or AEW or whatever. But if you call yourself a wrestling fan, I feel like part of your responsibility as a fan, if you're going to call yourself that, is to at the very least be aware and try out tasting some other stuff outside of what you normally do, right? Like, and there's no better example of that than something like Forbidden Door. Like, you're going to get incredible matches. The atmosphere is going to be incredible in the arena. You're going to see wrestlers you've never seen before if you don't follow the product, and you're going to become a fan of new talent. And you may want to start watching New Japan and or AEW going forward afterwards. Like, you never know. So it's one of those things where, like, and it's something where, like, growing up, it was a weird time because we had some random shows that were kind of similar. Like when WCW did like the crossover show with New Japan and stuff.
Starrcade 95 they did that had the WCW versus New Japan, that had like Benoit versus Liger, and I think you had Otani versus Eddie Guerrero. Those I remember those vividly, and I actually rewatched it more recently. And then you also had Worlds Collide with AAA in like 94.
Yes, so we got like little kind of things like that throughout our childhood. But now with like the distribution and the access to wrestling and the streaming networks and everything, it just feels like this is something that, because I'm not even being biased. Like, I really wish WWE did stuff like this. I would love it if the WWE did like a joint show with AEW or New Japan or some other company. Like, it would just, I just think it's great for the fans to just get a different look, a different vibe, there's a different perspective on stuff, just something different. And the last question I got for you before we move on to the next topic for other category is quick predictions. Like, do you think that, my assumption, as I'm sure it is yours, that we will get a trilogy, in front of Ospreay's crowd, and that'll be so Ospreay would need to win this rematch.
I actually disagree with that.
Really?
I actually think Kenny wins this one to go 2-0. And then the whole story that's been being told between Ospreay and Omega is Ospreay's been really kind of emphasizing that he needs to beat Kenny Omega for his career to be complete. So I think the natural thing is for him to lose in Kenny's home and then make the final challenge for All In, career versus title.
Ooh, I like that. Now, I think that actually makes a lot of sense too, because where I was getting at in kind of like my mind when I was like kind of thinking about what would make the most sense, who would win and lose these big matches. When these two matches initially got announced, I immediately assumed that Okada was going to beat Danielson, like without even like knowing anything else. But part of me was like, but I think they will split those matches. Like AEW is going to win one of those, New Japan's going to win one of those, and my mind was like, well, in that case, Omega would have to beat Ospreay if they're going to have Okada beat Danielson. But then I was like, but of course they're going to do a trilogy. So like, you probably want to go 1-1. But I actually like that. I like that idea. Cause I guess ultimately I thought that Kenny would like, you know what? That's probably the best scenario for everyone, because at the end of the day, Ospreay would win the feud because he'd win the final match in front of his crowd and it'd be a humongous win for him. But Kenny's still 2-1 in the series. Yeah. So both guys really win. That's actually probably exactly what they should do. I'm with you. I'm going to go with that too. I think Kenny's going to beat Ospreay at Forbidden Door. Okada's going to beat Danielson. Personally, I'd like to see Danielson win that. Just me personally, as a Danielson fan, I love Okada as well. But like, Danielson's also the kind of guy that I don't know if it is for sure, but he seems to me to be the kind of guy who probably goes backstage and he's like, I'm going to put him over. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, he doesn't care if he's winning or losing. He wants the moments. He knows the matches are going to be badass. And Danielson is bulletproof. He's legitimately in the GOAT conversation, all-time best wrestler. So like, nothing you can do is really going to hurt him at this point, whether he wins or loses.
And they both are. They both. Okay, Okada. What
Yeah.
Okada has been able to do, and he has two of the greatest rivalries as far as like in-ring work and storytelling. For people who love storytelling, go back and watch the Tanahashi and Okada rivalry. And there's been multiple people who did videos on how they told that long, intricate story from 2012 all the way to 2018, where every match was different in the way the characters went against it, or where the characters were at in each and every matchup that they had over a 6-year period. And then he did it again with an all-time rivalry that really elevated New Japan to where it is today as far as in the consciousness in North America with Okada and Omega. That 4 matches is some of the greatest matches that have ever happened in a professional wrestling ring. And Okada may have his best character ever, because for all the people that say, bloodline storyline is the best thing in wrestling, for people who say the Elite and BCC is the best thing in wrestling, my counter argument is Okada versus the Unruly Kids in New Japan has been my favorite rivalry of 2023. Ever since Kaito Kiyomiya from Pro Wrestling Noah kicked this man in the head, it has snapped him to become the angriest dad in professional wrestling. He hates these kids, and it's basically he hates the kids for being him 10 years ago. It's some of the most genius psychology-based storytelling that I have ever seen. He is the former president of the fraternity who now lives next door to the fraternity and is telling all these kids, get off my lawn. Get off my lawn. You don't belong here. He's feuding with Shota Umino and saying that you're not as good as people think you are. Ren Narita, oh, you're too angry and cocky. You don't belong here. He's eventually that's why I want for like the G1, I want him to be in the same block as Shooter, as Narita. Kaito Kiyomiya's in the G1. I want him to be in the same block as him. I want him to be in the same block as Yota Tsuji. All the Unruly Kids and Okada at the daycare in the G1 needs to be one of the blocks of the tournament. And he's been putting on some of the greatest trios matches in New Japan, like the matchup against Claudio, Moxley, and Shooter. That was my match of the week this week. If you haven't watched that, go out of your way to watch it, because it just had so much star power, so much intensity. The crowd was so invested into it. You got these stringing encounters with like Claudio doing the swing to Okada. You had Okada going at it with Moxley and Ishii. This was probably the best Moxley has looked in such a long time in like a multi-man matchup. He just felt like Bruiser Brody meets Tomohiro Ishii. You had Shooter kind of going up to the level as everyone else in the ring. It was just so great from Dominion, and that preluded the announcement of Danielson and Okada.
There you go. For everyone who's tuning into the show now or has come in since the regular start time of 9:30, we'll be going for about another 15 minutes live, and then you'll be hearing an interview from Carmen Michael and myself here on this Creator Spotlight. We started at around 8:30 this morning for anyone who's come into the show around now or since 9:30. The second other spotlight that we have today, unfortunately, the Iron Sheik passed away yesterday, and wanted to, obviously bring that up on the show today. Rest in peace to the Iron Sheik, a guy who obviously was a bit before our time. His big run with like the WWF Championship was, right around the time like our lives were starting, or maybe a little bit before. And obviously the biggest thing when I think of the Iron Sheik, outside of like the larger than life kind of personality of him and the viral clips of him that I've seen over the years and his Twitter and all that stuff, he, in my opinion, is most well known, and at least in my opinion, once again, is for being a big part of the birth of Hulkamania, because he was the WWF champion. Hulk Hogan hit him with the atomic leg drop and won his first WWF championship from the Iron Sheik. And obviously we know people, I fully understand, of course, the perception of Hulk Hogan over the years has changed and this and that. I get all that, but for what professional wrestling is and what it became and how big it got, and like the reason we're even able to talk about wrestling right now in 2023, really probably the reason it even exists, a big part of it is because of Hulk Hogan beating the Iron Sheik, becoming the champion, and like really putting this all on his back with Vince Jr. and and the whole thing really, hidden heights that we never ever would have thought. Oh, by the way, no, we have not missed the Dominic talk. Well, that's coming up here in just a second. So yeah, I just wanted to give obviously thoughts, and it's a somber episode today. I've talked a lot about, obviously Jeremy. For those of you who are tuning in a little later as well, Jeremy isn't here today. His father did pass away the other day, unfortunately. So please give your thoughts and everything over to Jeremy. And thoughts are also with Iron Sheik and his family. Just, Sheik, I believe Sheik, I missed how old he was. He was like in his 70s or 80s, I believe.
I believe he was 81.
81. So, I mean, like, had a long life, especially for a guy who was in a business that was so grueling, especially in the era that he came from. So, like, had a long life, and he left a really rememberable legacy. So I wanted to put that out there. And any additional thoughts or anything you want to say about the Iron Sheik?
Definitely a pioneer when you think about like the foreign heel in professional wrestling. Like so many that have followed the Iron Sheik have kind of based their whole characters behind him. Like you had someone like Miro come out and say, he studied a lot of his tapes, and that influenced what we saw with Rusev in WWE and how he came across, and the stuff that you would see from like the older tapes from like the late 70s and early 80s with Iron Sheik versus Sergeant Slaughter, and what he did with his tag team with Nikolai Volkov kind of later on after his WWF championship reign. Iron Sheik is such a pioneer, and a lot of people, their only memories of Iron Sheik would be like he didn't want to take a bump in the Gimmick Battle Royal, so he won the Gimmick Battle Royal.
WrestleMania 20?
17.
That's right.
The Gimmick Battle Royal at WrestleMania 17, or it would be about his rants and calling and frack the Hulk Hogan and all that stuff that he would talk about, and coming up with the term jabroni. Like we had The Rock have like a near 4-minute video on his social media talking about how he influenced, and that was how he came up with the word jabroni from the Iron Sheik. So he influenced so many other people that you probably didn't get to see Iron Sheik's work, but you have been influenced and been a fan of Iron Sheik's work from the people that have watched him and been inspired by him. So RIP to Sheiky baby, and best wishes to his family and prayers to them.
Yes, absolutely. We will move on to our next spotlights here.
I need to finish the story. In the WWE, the story never finishes.
All right, so we have some WWE spotlights to talk about. The first one that we're going to talk about today is Cody Rhodes and Dominic Mysterio. This is something that I'm not going to say like I didn't know that I needed it, because like I'm when it comes to Cody, I am always thinking I am kind of usually playing chess while others are playing checkers. And what I mean by this is like, because I think about him particularly so often when it comes to this stuff, I'm always thinking like, who are other second generation wrestlers who are, like who could, what things would make sense for him to do when he isn't going for the championship? Like, what's he going to fill his time doing? And I won't say that I haven't thought about the idea of Dom and Cody before, but I never thought it would have like the level of interest or heat that it seems to already have. Cody is still super over. Which is very good to see, because I still believe he should have won in the WrestleMania main event, but we're at where we're at with all this right now. And Dominic is the way he's leaned into this and the way they're presenting him, and with Rhea calling him Latino heat and stuff. I love this. And I think that Cody, I'm not gonna say will carry Dom to a great match, because like I think Dom is out there holding his own for what he needs to do. But I think that they will make that something special. Like when this eventually happens, I think Cody's going to do everything he can to make Dominic look like $1 million and make it look like Dominic has a real chance of winning like throughout the match. And by the end of it, the fans are going to go crazy for Cody winning, because they're so, and the thing with Dom, it isn't even like, I hate the term X-Pac heat, because Sean Waltman doesn't deserve that, but the heat that Dominic has, it isn't go away heat. It isn't change the channel heat. This is fun to boo this dude heat. And like, the way he's leaning into it, this is fun for everybody and it's working. So how do you feel about Dominic and Cody? Looks like that's going to be a match coming up soon.
I thought it was a very good segment on Monday Night Raw, and WWE can go about this in so many different ways. Like I know we got a super chat in there talking about like potentially these two kind of going at it as a Money in the Bank qualifier, and that would be interesting. But I think that this may be kind of a teaser of what Cody's going to do after Brock Lesnar. Like you can have Cody in Money in the Bank now and have Dom in there too. You can have them both in the Money in the Bank ladder match, and it's continuing the rivalry without giving away the one-on-one matchup, because I don't think WWE will find a more over babyface versus a more over heel in their company or in wrestling in general than Cody Rhodes versus Dominic Mysterio. Dominic Mysterio's getting some of the loudest boos WWE has heard in years, while Cody Rhodes is their top babyface, and he's the guy that can really kind of be the anchor for WWE post Roman Reigns' whole, legendary title reign. So, but they also have to kind of spend the next 6-8 months kind of keeping Cody busy. And after this Brock Lesnar feud, he's going to need something that's as big, and it's going to be almost undeniable before he eventually gets back into the world title scene. Now, I'm just going to present this scenario. What if Dominic Mysterio wins Money in the Bank and cashes in on Seth Rollins, and he becomes the new world heavyweight champion? Because you got Seth Rollins already feuding with the Judgment Day. He seems like he's going to be versing Finn Balor at Money in the Bank. If the next option is now Dominic Mysterio, who's his next challenger, and Dom wins there, you're going to need Dom to have some big-time challengers, and there's not a lot bigger than Cody Rhodes. So say that Cody is close to winning Money in the Bank, and it's because of Rhea Ripley that he doesn't win Money in the Bank. Now, when he's done with Brock Lesnar, he has a reason to go after Dominic Mysterio and the World Heavyweight Championship. Because I'm sorry, I enjoyed all their matches, but I feel like you're not going to get a better matchup between Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins than what we saw at Hell in a Cell, because of the circumstances around it, because of the realism there. I don't want to see that again for at least a little while. So I don't see Cody going after the world title as long as Seth Rollins has it. But if you have a dastardly heel that no one believes should be the world champion, Dominic Mysterio, and now you have Cody opposite him, that's a money program that could be on the top of the card for Raw.
That's interesting. That would be so wild if Cody finished the story by beating Dominic Mysterio for the world title. And there is a lot they could do with that story. I mean, Cody and Ray have a history themselves. They wrestled each other in the WrestleMania in Atlanta. Cody's whole undashing gimmick at one point was because Ray kicked him in the face, and that was he had a whole career change because of it. And so there's an interesting history between Cody and the Mysterios, and that could carry over into a feud with Cody and Dominic. Very interested to see. And Call Me Crazy was he left the super chat. We basically addressed it, but thank you very much, Call Me Crazy. Said he told Sean Ross Sapp on Monday, but he hopes that Dom versus Cody, the feud ends in a Money in the Bank qualifier match with Brock interfering, costing Cody, giving Dom the win over Cody. I could see that happening. I think that's a potential scenario that could actually be happening. And Call Me Crazy also says, with another super chat, thank you very much, says Cody finally beats Roman, but out comes Dom with Money in the Bank. Oh, God.
That might be even better than my idea. Call Me Crazy. That might be even better. Is Cody finishes the story and then Dom cashes in on him.
Oh my God. That might happen.
Oh my God.
That might happen. I'm going to throw my television off my roof if that happens. But now listen, I love Dominic, but oh my God, if they finally finish that story and then that's actually a good idea though. Call Me Crazy. It actually is a good idea. Unfortunately, we do have to keep moving on. For anyone who's here for the Carmen Michael interview, that will be airing in about 10 minutes. We'll make sure we'll rifle through these last couple topics. At about 10:15 Eastern time, you'll be hearing the interview with myself and Carmen Michael to wrap the show up. It's about a 40-minute long interview. Next WWE topic, today's spotlight, Gunther. He wrestled Kevin Owens on Raw. Thought it was fantastic. It was the kind of thing that I think Raw needs a lot more of. Just WWE needs a lot more of in general on free television for Raw and SmackDown. And I know that you agree with this. I think Gunther is, well, I know you might even have higher opinions because I want your thoughts on this, but I think he's clearly the best Intercontinental Champion they've had in a super long time, and somebody who just in general has become a gigantic asset to the WWE, and someone who I'll also mention, I was definitely wrong because I was right and wrong, because when he was with NXT UK, you know, I covered all of it for the weekend or week after week. I'm very familiar with Gunther. I was, you know, pre-WWE as well, his stuff with PCO and all the legendary stuff he did pre-WWE. Now, I was under the impression when he made it to Raw or SmackDown, based on him being a part of like the Survivor Series match a few years ago, they just kind of like jobbed him out. And I thought Vince was just going to see him as like kind of like an overweight, like doesn't see the hype. And he was going to be like a Lars Sullivan. He was going to kind of be like in and out. They were generic. They weren't going to know what to do. Now, what I didn't foresee was Gunther. I figured they were going to ask him to lose weight, but I didn't expect him to do a complete transformation the way that he has. And I'm sure that's something Vince sees, and they respect him because of it a lot more probably. And that probably also is leading to a lot of the push. So it's a mixture, I think, of the talent and the fact that he's gotten himself in a really good shape and shown the dedication that probably Vince is looking for, Triple H is looking for. Now, you had told me privately, you think that Gunther may be the best signing WWE has had in years, just in general.
I think he's the best signing WWE has had in the past decade. And I know there's going to be people like yourself who's a big Cody Rhodes fan and who would put him into that conversation. But I feel like Cody Rhodes has met his expectations for what he was on outside of WWE, what he was able to accomplish there, and then coming back in his same form. I think he's met the expectation. I don't think there's any signing that has exceeded the expectations more than Gunther. That's why I think he's the best WWE signing of the past decade, because like you said, he came in to be like a top monster heel for NXT UK. He did that and then some, became the longest reigning champion of the modern era at that time as NXT UK champion, put on classic matches against Tyler Bate and Ilya Dragunov. He made us watch NXT UK in the pandemic because of that Ilya Dragunov matchup in the empty arena, and then another classic against Ilya Dragunov on TakeOver. Then he went to NXT and he exceeded expectations over there with just being just an undeniable prospect to bring up to the main roster. And now he's come here and he's revived the Intercontinental Championship, where you have Seth Rollins kind of trying to build the World Heavyweight Championship as this workhorse championship, but already the Intercontinental Championship, the original workhorse championship in WWE, is back to that type of status because of what Gunther has been able to accomplish with his classic matches against Sheamus and the three-way with Sheamus and Drew, all the fabulous TV matches that he had last year with the likes of Ricochet and Shinsuke Nakamura, Xavier Woods this year, and then Monday against Kevin Owens. That was the best TV match of the year so far for WWE. So he has just done so much to exceed what people thought he was able to do. I think Gunther is by far the best signing of the past decade. He's the best wrestler overall in WWE, and he is WWE's answers to the Will Ospreays of the world, to the Kazuchika Okadas of the world, to the Kenny Omegas of the world, to the Bryan Danielsons of the world. He is WWE's best bout machine.
There you go. I can't really say anything higher praise than that. And I agree. I think he's been fantastic, and he's a guy who he if he stays healthy and within like the good graces of like management and booking decisions and stuff, like he'll be one of the world champions of the WWE. Like, I mean, it's very clear. He's done a fantastic job. So massive shout out to Gunther and to Kevin Owens. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I want to see, just more of that. I will watch Raw and SmackDown way more consistently if I know more of their shows are including more of those kind of matches.
Yeah, and I saw people say like, "Oh, it felt like an NXT era Monday Night Raw episode." I was like, "No, you guys didn't watch NXT. NXT was like one good matchup, a bunch of squashes, and some good promos. That's what the NXT era of Triple H was. This was a dynamite edition of Monday Night Raw, where you got Ricochet and Shinsuke Nakamura having a match. You had Gunther and Kevin Owens. You had Seth Rollins and Damian Priest. That's the type of lineup that Dynamite gives us on a Wednesday, and we got it on a Monday Night Raw. I think that episode of Raw was the best one they've done this year.
Awesome. Last set of spotlights here. Gonna run the...
I want to give a big motherfucking shout out
Yeah. Really quickly, I'm going to touch on it because we did kind of touch on it already. Just really quickly, want to throw out there, KENTA did defeat Nick Wayne for the DEFY World Championship last weekend. I don't think that it's available to watch still. Someone in the comments or chat can correct that if it is available already. But to my knowledge, it hasn't aired yet. I could tell if you were to say something. Okay.
I haven't seen it yet.
But because DEFY does generally run like they do their live show and then it shows as like a tape later on. But obviously the big thing there also, of course, KENTA won that title and Nick Wayne is going to be debuting on AEW. I believe it's July 12th against Swerve on Dynamite. So like they're in the preparation stage right now of getting Nick Wayne ready for AEW. And KENTA, it's really cool because although SP3 is clearly down on his New Japan run, it is cool to see KENTA like being a part of the indie scene in 2023. So I want to give a shout out to KENTA for becoming the DEFY champion. And the last spotlight that I want to bring up, of course, is Blake Christian is your new Game Changer Wrestling World Champion. This is a guy who pre-WWE was killing it as, all heart Blake Christian, mainly got over just because of his in-ring work, just super, super solid in the ring. And went off to WWE. He was Trey Baxter for a little bit, did some 205 Live. And ever since kind of resurfacing on the indies after that run, during the pandemic, he really has established himself as the top heel of GCW. And this was a long time coming. He bided his time. He had basically a Money in the Bank cash-in opportunity that he was ready to use. And he teased it week after week after week, month after month at this point. And basically what wound up happening is Rina Yamashita, who's the Ultraviolent champion, she won Tournament of Survival this weekend. That got her a title shot against Masha Slamovich at Cage of Survival the next night for the World Championship. Blake Christian pulled a Seth Rollins, a WrestleMania 31 main event, and he came out, he cashed in mid-match, made it a triple threat, and somewhat similar to Seth Rollins as well, he curb stomped Masha Slamovich. Now, I will say Blake's curb stomp does look a bit more brutal, but just the way he hits it on people, it's a lot less clean.
Because it's like a double foot stomp where he propels himself up and then drops on the other leg.
He bases off of your back and then comes down on your head. And so Blake Christian pinned Masha, and he got kind of the Matt Cardona treatment of being pelted with garbage. And what's funny about or interesting about this whole thing with Blake to me is that he got himself so over as a babyface for years based on his in-ring work. And since becoming a heel, he barely wrestles. Like he has a lot of matches, but he barely like wrestles. Like he goes out there, he kind of gets beat up. He runs around the ring, and eventually the ref's going to get distracted. He's going to hit you in the dick, and then you're going to get curb stomped. And he's done a really good job for himself, getting the fans to hate him. But at the same time, he's the kind of guy who, if you talk to him at intermission or after the show, I don't want to like ruin this guy's aura or whatever, but like if you talk to him and like, or you come across him, he's like a super cool, nice dude. Like he's one of those dudes. He's not like an MJF guy who's gonna like tell you to go F yourself. Like he will on camera, but then like if you go like shake his hand like an intermission or whatever, he's always like, hey, what's up, y'all? Like he's a good dude. So congratulations to Blake Christian, a guy who I think has deserved a lot in the wrestling world for a long time, a guy who I don't think got a fair shake in the WWE system, and a guy who, in my opinion, has the most prestigious title outside of, mainstream wrestling. I think GCW, that World Championship, is probably the most important title out there right now. So, So any additional thoughts? I hate to cut you off because I do have to run the interview in a second, but thoughts on Blake Christian become the GCW champion?
Overall, I thought Tournament of Survival weekend was great. It was just great death match wrestling at its finest. Rina Yamashita winning the tournament made a lot of sense, her being the Ultraviolent champion. And I believe that was the first time they did like an all-female one-on-one matchup for the GCW World Championship.
I think so. They had recently done like the women's five-way.
The five-way, yeah. But one-on-one, I think that
it was the first one-on-one women's. The first time. And then for Blake Christian, not only to come in that fashion with two women battling it out and him cashing in the way he did, but he did it in Atlantic City that started his whole heel run, where he was playing a babyface and the Atlanta City fans in the showboat just started booing him, and he didn't know why. He didn't know what was going on, but he has just fully embraced it, become the top heel in the promotion. And it's always weird when I see him in Ring of Honor, and I'm like, this is not, he's such a douchebag. Completely different.
Yeah. It's like night and day. It's like this is not even Blake Christian. This is someone else's Christian.
Yes, it's like seeing it's like seeing the original version of Blake Christian in Ring of Honor, but like not. It is two totally different things for sure.
Yeah, he's very talented in that way that he could play both roles so well. But yeah, congratulations to Blake Christian, and he's gonna be a great Game Changer Wrestling champion. And I agree with you, the top independent world championship out there.
Agreed. There you go. Well, SP3, thank you very much for joining and filling in for Jeremy today. Anyone who's joined the show late, I'll mention it one more time. You know, Jeremy's father passed away a couple days ago, and that's why he's not on the show today. And I just want to stress it over and over. Please have him in your thoughts and his family in your thoughts, because it's there's no words. It's terrible. We love you, Jeremy. We really do, man. So SP3, before you get out of here, if you want to plug your stuff real quick.
Follow me on the Twitter machine at TrueHillSP3. Check out the True Hill Heat YouTube channel. That is TRU, no E, True Hill Heat. I got my interview with Bobby Fish up on there right now, where we talk about his feelings on Undisputed Era being broken up, his departure from AEW. We got a lot of great quotes, great stories from Bobby Fish in that interview. And check me out later today, 1:05 p.m. Eastern Time on AE Ramble, reviewing last night's AEW Dynamite. More in long form with Jimmy Macaram. It's going to be a lot of fun. So check us out at 1:05 p.m.
There you go. Thank you again, SP3, for joining me as always, brother. And I will be airing this interview right now with Carmen Michael. And please let me know. Give me feedback if you can't hear the audio or something's wrong when you're all listening to this. Please let me know in the chat. I'm going to air it right now. I'll be back for a couple minutes afterwards, and then I got to go clock into my shoot job. But I'm going to air it right now. Thank you again, SP3, and enjoy this interview with myself and Carmen Michael. Welcome to the Creator Spotlight here on the Spotlight. I'm Steven Jensen, normally joined by Jeremy Lambert, but we're doing it just me and my guest today. Jeremy had something with his family come up, and obviously we're thinking of Jeremy, and but that said, we're happy to be here today, do an interview for y'all right here for the Spotlight. My guest today rather is the voice of New South Pro Wrestling. He's a pro wrestling commentator, ring announcer, audio engineer, stage crew, graphic designer, and undefeated against Donnie Primetime, which I'm definitely going to talk a little bit about. My guest today, yes, is Carmen Michael. Carmen, thank you for joining us today. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well, man. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. So it was cool finally meeting you in person. I've known you like through, like friends of friends through like the wrestling space, Twitter, and that kind of stuff. Of course, I've known you through watching New South, especially. And you've done a lot of work with my good friend Mose, who's a friend of the show, been on here plenty of times.
Love Mose.
Yes, shout out to John Mosley, jumping Johnny Mosley, as Dylan Hales would say. So this has been a long time coming, and it was good to finally meet you in person at GCW Into the Light back on 4/21. So yeah, I'm happy to have you, man.
That old carousel podcast you had going on there. Everyone hopping in.
Dude, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, initially it was just going to be me and Cole Radrick, just like getting a few minutes. And then I saw you were in there, so said what's up. And then I was like,
it was Cole, Jaden, then me, and then I want to say Speedball, and then Brian Keith. Like it was just
Brian Keith rolled up. There was someone else there too. Scott Hensley, we got popped up out of nowhere. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. So y'all can check that out over on FightfulSelect.com. There's been a few articles that went up through that as well over on Fightful.com. So yeah, man. So speaking of, like, how did you get involved? Like, I guess with what you're doing with ring announcing and commentating and all that stuff. Just to begin with, before you even like got in, or was New South really like your first big opportunity? Like, how did you really get into it?
So I first started with Southern Honor Wrestling. I was doing their lighting. This is back in 2019, maybe. And then the pandemic happened. I had been a fan of New South for years. I would go to a bunch of their shows, and Brandon Williams would always say, "Man, we've got to get you out. Like, you could be a big asset here. Like, I know you could help out." So I went to one of the tryouts, and I went saying like, "Hey, I just want to ring announce and help out with production." But while I'm here, I might as well, do the tryout. So I did all the exercises, ran the ropes, took some bumps, like whatever. And ended up, unbeknownst to me, tearing my quad during this.
Oh, wow.
But I ended up ring announcing for the first time the very next night
with a torn quad.
With a torn quad. I'm just thinking like, man, my leg is a lot more sore than usual. But like, I hobbled into the ring, did the pre-show, and then ended up getting blood poisoning and was in the hospital for a few days. Because I'm used to heavy workouts, like I'm used to being sore. I didn't think anything about it. So I'm like, okay. And it got to like day 3, and I was like, all right, something's a little off here. So I went and got everything checked out, and they like rushed me to the ER and like put me in a hospital bed and all this. I'm like, this seems a little extreme.
Dude, I had no idea about any of this.
Yes.
So this was your introductory to
working
in the world of professional wrestling.
And then I remember I got out of the hospital, and I think, I could be wrong, I think it was the next day, New South had a show in Huntsville, and I showed up like wearing a big old knee brace. I just like start wobbling up, and Donnie Primetime is just like, what the hell are you doing here, man? I was like, there's a show. So I think that showed everyone like, hey, you know what? Maybe this guy does want to do this. So
yeah, proved your dedication doing all that first trips with a torn quad. That's insane, dude.
and then with commentary too, I just got thrown in on that. I was just ring announcing the pre-shows. Oh, we had a holiday show where we had a battle royal where it was a bunch of our students that were in the battle royal, and Dump Sanders, our promoter, was like, hey, I think I want to put you in on commentary with Mose because, Mose doesn't know these kids like you do. And I was nervous as hell. And I got in there, and it, like, when I sat down, I was super nervous, but the second the match started, it just kind of flowed, and I felt like me and him had a good chemistry, like right from the get-go.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun.
I've had some off-the-record conversations with Mose that involved you a little bit. Like, me and him used to talk a lot because we used to do a lot of like MMA podcasting together. So we'd just be sitting there in like calls, like, non-recorded, just sitting there. And during the pandemic, especially, we were doing a lot of those shows together. Your name would always come up, and you would always talk about how enthusiastic you were. And also, if I remember correctly, you were very into Rhino's appearances.
No, it was Shark Boy.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, my bad. Okay.
It started as a gag because at the time I had a podcast where 2 of my friends had never watched TNA before. And they had just started watching because Kenny Omega came over and was challenging for the title.
Right.
Which that was all weird too, because I ended up working for Impact, the show that he won the title, and like all that. But we started a podcast where I was basically showing them all the old TNA stuff. And it became like a recurring like gag on the podcast where, Shark Boy would come out, he would lose to Abyss, he would lose to Monty Brown, he'd lose. And it's basically like a gag, like, oh, come on, Shark Boy, I thought this was your time. So we ended up putting out a tweet one year at Haas that Shark Boy saw, and then he messaged New South. He's like, hey, so y'all want to bring me in? So he ended up coming in. So like we just continued the bid. I wore a Shark Boy mask on commentary. It was
that's
ridiculous.
Right.
It was absolutely ridiculous in the best way possible.
I was getting that confused because Rhino was wrestling for New South around that time. Though. Yes. That's why I was getting that confused there. And that totally makes sense. So speak a little bit more on the Impact appearance.
So with Impact, this was still during the pandemic. At the time, they were doing virtual meet and greets for their pay-per-views, for their VIP, since obviously couldn't have fans in attendance. So I was asked to provide audio for their virtual meet and greet. So I brought some wireless microphones, and I, sat there, monitored the levels during it and all that. And while I was there, I helped out with the ring crew and had a great experience. Was there for a few days. Ended up, a couple of us on the ring crew stepped out and were watching the Kenny Omega Rich Swann match. And Scott D'Amore just walks up and he's like, he looks back and said, you guys ready to be on pay-per-view? And we're like, huh? And next thing I know, there's just a camera pointing at us. So we're all just sitting there watching the match, camera right in our face, trying to pretend like it's not there.
Oh man, that's so cool. Did you have a background like in because I know, you know, with you being like it's like audio engineer and graphic design and that kind of stuff, were you doing that kind of stuff pre-pro wrestling and it's just kind of worked out to where it's like a good space to be able to do all these things?
So I was originally a vocalist in a band that toured around, band here in Alabama called Throne of Eden. We released an album, like we toured around, got to play with Sister Hazel, Saving Abel, like a couple bands like that.
Nice.
Shallow Side, I know they're doing some great things right now. Got to play with them. Went to college to originally learn how to record, and I ended up loving live audio a lot more. So I was working in live audio, working as a stagehand. Oh Lord, I've worked local crew for everyone from Slipknot to Rolling Stones, Dave Matthews Band, obviously like WWE, AEW. So I was doing that beforehand and running audio. And then that's what got me into Southern Honor, helping with lights, which kind of snowballed into me helping out with New South. And now at New South, I mean, I set up all the production, I ring announce, I commentate, I do all the graphics, I edit all the entrance videos. Like, so it's snowballed rather quickly.
That's wild. So what's it like having what's the experience been like working for New South in all those capacities? Because I know it's Dump Sanders and it's Cabana Man Dan, right? Is
Dump Sanders and Brandon Williams.
Locksmith. Okay, gotcha. So how is it like working for those two guys? And I mean, obviously they've given you a lot of responsibilities.
Man, it has been absolutely great. I love New South. I mean, I'm wearing the shirt right now. New South was something that I remember as a fan coming to watch, and I'm like, okay, like this is a lot different than the other independents here in Alabama. And that's not throwing shade on anyone, but like when I was going to New South as a fan, I mean, you had people like Austin Theory there and Baron Black and Odinson, like all these names that have gone on to, you know, I joke around on commentary sometimes, you know, whatever happened to that Austin Theory guy?
Sure.
So seeing all the production, seeing the video packages that Chris McInnes would put together, who used to be with New South, always did excellent work. Seeing all this, and I'm just like, so wait, like you can have wrestling that's not just like in a middle school gym with like a bunch of guys with beer bellies. Like this is cool. So I've always gone to bat for New South, and then once I became a part of it, they just welcomed me in like family. And you know, over the years, you know, people have left, and I've ended up taking up more responsibilities as it's gone on, and now, you know, I'm taking more of a behind the scenes aspect as well as on camera. So I love it. It's my baby.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. So I know you have a background now in everything leading up to like joining New South and with audio and live audio and all that stuff. When did you become an actual wrestling fan? Was it like a fandom since like like way back, or? So
my grandma used to tell me, God bless her soul, she said the only way I would ever sit still as a baby would be when wrestling was on the TV.
Okay.
And like I immediately gravitated towards Sting. You know, he had the blonde flat top, he had the colorful face paint. So apparently since I was literally a baby, Sting's been my favorite wrestler. And, you know, growing up, that never changed. I've got to work with him a few times now. It was the weirdest thing at AEW in Nashville. I ended up getting put on the show call, working as a stagehand, but I was on show call for it. And like, obviously I got like a bunch of friends that work there. They're coming up and talking to me. We're all standing around watching, I think it was Thunder Rosa and Mercedes Martinez, perhaps, in a hardcore match. We're all watching on the monitor. And then here comes Sting, full face paint, stands right next to me. We both look at each other, nod, and both standing there like arms crossed watching the match. And in my head, I'm thinking like, I was you literally every year for Halloween. Like, not like I was you occasionally, like every single year I was Sting.
Did it evolve from like the colored face paint to like the black and white to the red
Yes.
and black?
It did. It's awesome, man.
I love that. Yeah. So is it safe to say you were more of like a WCW kid than WWF kid?
I was not allowed to watch WWF. I was told it was absolute filth and I was not supposed to watch it. So instead, I got to watch the NWO and all the cruiserweights, which huge fan of the cruiserweights, and ended up working recently with Juventud Guerrera. And then later this year, I'm working a show that not only has Juvi, but also has Psychosis, which is like mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
I was explaining to the promoter, I'm not going to give away like what matches are happening or whatever, but I was like, the fact that you have both of these two people on this show, when like growing up, my brother and I would play Nintendo 64. We'd always play WCW NWO Revenge.
Yes.
Always be a tag team, and we would always be Juventud and Psychosis. And I'm like, dude, this is perfect.
Dude, that's awesome. I can kind of relate a little bit with that, where I've done a little bit of commentary, not much, but I've done a little bit for Championship District Wrestling, CDW here in Atlanta. Jameson Ryan and Diamond Sheik and those guys. And they Jameson just straight up asked me, he was like, hey, you know, do you have any like preferred people you'd want to commentate for? I said Ashley Dimbois, because I could see that she was going to be a massive star.
Awesome.
And I was like, if I can call a match now, I probably won't have another chance because she's going to be signed. And I said the cat Ernest Miller is going to be on your show. I said that's like, I don't even care what he's doing, but like anything that involves the cat, because I'm such a WCW mark that like I'm just like you, where I was like, I have an opportunity to call, because dude, I've got like, I mean, I just happen to have this sitting here. I've got like a signed Glacier mask over here in my office. You can barely see the signature, but like this guy, he signs it "Stay Cool Glacier." I was like, this guy rules.
Of course he does.
Yeah, he has to. He happened to be the lacrosse coach at my high school when I was growing up. Like, it's the most small world thing ever. So I knew him as Glacier, as a WCW mark, and then I'd see him walking around school as Coach Lloyd, and I'd just try not to mark out.
I was about to say, I imagine there's a lot of that in the Georgia area. Just there's a lot of wrestlers there.
Yeah, well, so like the people who watch this show are probably sick of hearing me talk about it, especially because of how prevalent he is currently. But I went to high school with Cody Rhodes, so
I'm aware.
So when we go to these wrestling matches, like we'd have these matches, we were on the same team, and like every now and with Dusty went to all the matches, so I was always just awestruck just seeing Dusty just in general. But occasionally, like the Steiner Bros would pop in, or like DDP would be there, and it'd just be like, I have to wrestle in front of Diamond Dallas Page. Like, oh my god, dude, no way.
This is your tryout.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing
don't mess up. You can be signed by WCW.
The funny thing is, I've heard Xavier Woods talk about that on podcasts before with Chris Jericho and Cody, where he was talking about how, because him and Cody wrestled in high school, and that was his big thing, was he knew Dusty was going to be there. If I can beat Dusty's kid in front of Dusty, then Dusty's going to have to recommend me to the WWE, and then I can get a job, wrestling for the WWE one day. So
lots that go on, and
yes, all the connections.
This is my shot.
Yes, so that is true though. It was one of those things where, like, especially the Atlanta airport, that was the first time I met Kevin Nash, the first wrestler I ever met in the Atlanta airport. I still have the autographs behind me in this white thing over here. Oh yeah, he's the man. So like. We had a neighbor who like did like the curtains in the house of Sting, because he was like local, and just random stuff like that. But that's enough about that. That's funny though, all the connections there with all that, and the WCW thing. Like, so who were kind of like, so Sting, I get that. Like, there's a lot of us who, for me it was the Macho Man Randy Savage in WCW. I was also a WCW kid over WWF. I know Sean Ross Sapp here at Fightful, he talks about it often. Sting, like, he saw Sting for the first time, got hooked on wrestling. Who else would you consider to be like a really big fan of? I know you mentioned some of the cruiserweights. I was a big cruiserweight fan as well. Who are some of your other guys?
So watching WCW is weird. Like, even as a kid, I was into the mid card. Like, I was really into Raven, Saturn, the man whose name I'm not supposed to say. Of course, sure. Obviously, all the cruiserweights. Like, I loved all the Lucha Libre. And then Chris Jericho was a huge one, which I've had the pleasure of working with him and his band quite a few times. I absolutely love Chris.
Do you have any stories about that? Because in my opinion, Chris Jericho is the GOAT. I think he's the best of all time, personally. And I can only imagine what it's like working a Fozzy show.
So I did a couple music videos with them. I did Nowhere to Run and Burn Me Out. And Burn Me Out was the first one where I'm like, what the hell is my life? Because I remember he walked in and he was just like carrying a bag of Subway, and I'm just like, oh man, I didn't know there's a Subway around here. He was like, yeah, man, it's right down the street. Like, here's how you get to it. And he just walked off, and I'm thinking like, what the hell is my life? And then like the next music video, I walked in, he's like, hey Carmen, what's up? And then we sat down and ate Chipotle and talked about Metallica. Like, and I ran into him at AEW in Nashville, and like I was telling some of the stagehands I work with, like, oh yeah, like, I got some friends that work here, and they're all like, yeah, okay. And then when Jericho walked by, he stopped, he turned around and said, dude, what's up? And like dabbed me up, and I looked back, and all the stagehands are just like, what? I love it.
That's so awesome. Yeah, Jericho's the man.
That's crazy too. Like, top 3 favorite wrestlers of all time: Sting, CM Punk, Jericho, and I've got to work with all 3 of them, and it's just like, it's just strange to me, like how quickly things have like turned in here. I've only been working in wrestling really full time for 3 years. Like, already getting to do that, like, that's wild to me.
And it sounds like you've had, not that I would want you to have to like air this out if you didn't, but it sounds like you've had generally good experiences with like all these heroes of yours, which is like even better.
Never had a bad experience with any of them. I think I could. It's not released yet, but there's a certain TV show coming out, Heels season 2. Very first day on set is me, Braden Toon, Dylan McQueen, and then one of our trainees at New South that were all standing around. Very first person to walk up to us was CM Punk. He walks up, and is like, good morning, guys. How y'all doing? And like, so pleasant to work with. I never had a bad experience with him. I know I know there's a lot of stories, but like, I've never had a bad experience with him.
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't have to elaborate if you don't want to, but like, what do you have any like thoughts or opinions out like you want there as far as like him returning? Because obviously him coming back to AEW is like massive news in wrestling, and you working with them and everything. Kind of what do you feel about his big return and everything?
I'm for it. I mean, there's a lot of money on the table right now, and I'm not sure if they, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but I mean, if they can get past it, I feel like that's a lot of money there ready to be made. And you look at other, major sports, people get in fights in locker rooms all the time, and it's just, okay, let's deal with it and move on. So I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but
sure.
I think it's a good thing bringing him back.
Okay, fair enough. There's definitely a wide range of opinions. A lot of people watching this right now know I'm not the biggest CM Punk fan, but I am wearing a t-shirt right now. I was
about to say, I saw the stars.
I was going to kind of troll and not even say anything about it to see if people picked up on it, but listen, I'm a big AEW fan. I'm a day one fan. I'm obviously a Cody guy. I followed him when he started the company.
I was literally at the first show.
There you go, double or nothing, I'm a big supporter. I'm a supporter of like all wrestling. I want everyone to succeed, but I think AEW is a really important thing in the space of wrestling, and it's something we didn't have since WCW for so long. So, I just want what's best for the company. If CM Punk coming back is what's best for the company, then I'm for it. I might have my own kind of personal things here and there that like I might not love about the guy, but I'm also not blind to what you just said. Like it's going to be big money and it's going to be super interesting. And to be fair, like the less that I know about what actually happened and the less that I know about their actual feelings toward each other is better for television. Like, it's better for me to not like I want that feeling of like, if CM Punk and Kenny Omega are in the ring together, something might go bad. Something might go crazy. You know what I mean? Like
that's where the money is, man.
Yeah. It was like when Matt Hardy came back to WWE and attacked Edge, and everyone was like, yo, like what's going to actually happen though? So that's kind of how I feel about it. Is like, I'm very interested. I'm optimistic about it. I think it's going to be good television.
I remember being like, I think I was around 13 maybe when the whole Matt Hardy Edge thing went on. So like as a teenage boy, I'm just like, yo, what is going on? Like, this is sick, man. I was like telling all my friends, like, dude, you gotta watch this. And they're like, why would I watch wrestling? And I'm like, dude, you gotta watch this.
That's how I felt too. That was a lot of us. A lot of the people that are going to be in the chat watching this when this airs, like a lot of us are in that boat where we thought it was the coolest thing ever. Like no one else cared. And it was too bad that there wasn't like,
I'm like, no, you don't understand. He left, but now he's back. But we don't know, like, is he really back?
Yes, he was yelling Ring of Honor like out loud on camera and on WWE television. What in the world?
There's like, okay, I mean, that's cool, I guess.
Good times. That was already a long time ago. There's people that are listening that's funny, you know what we're talking about.
Oh, that hurts my soul.
It does
so much.
Dude, there's people I interview sometimes, even I guess like I don't know if wrestlers that are young enough. Yeah, I guess maybe some of them like that I've talked to. You know, nothing they can do about this. It just is what it is. But like they were born after WCW and ECW had folded, so like they were born after that even existed, and it's just like for me to have to put myself in that perspective, it's just a totally different point of view.
I'll see someone like Hunter Drake wrestling, and I'm just thinking like, you are so like I was already like having these experiences like before you were even born. Like this is so weird to me, man.
Speaking of Hunter Drake and just kind of like the wrestlers like on the come up right now, especially in the areas that you're involved. Who are some people? I mean, Hunter Drake's someone I've interviewed on this show. I think he's super talented. And we mentioned some others as well. The Locksmith, Brandon Williams. Who are some other people that you want to kind of put out there, whether they're veterans, like been around a while, or just kind of up and coming.
Man, the Southeast is like really brimming with talent right now. Like obviously Hunter Drake. I think of Braden Toon, Locksmith, Brandon Williams. God, there's so many. Brogan Finley is a name that comes to mind. Like there's so many people, like not just on the New South roster, but all across the Southeast that I watch. And I'm just thinking like, this is incredible. Someone like Kylie Alexa, I'll throw her out there. She's been wrestling a little over a year and is already like signed to the NWA, is like putting on like banger matches. Like it's incredible. Like the talent that are down here in the Southeast.
Yeah, I completely agree. It really feels like it's thriving, and it is wild with all the different like streaming platforms and stuff now, like IWTV and Fight and everything else is like branching off. What's New South currently on right now?
Right now, our shows are airing on YouTube.
Right.
That may not be where we're at for too much longer, but
sure, I gotcha.
But I can't say much about that right now.
That's okay. I gotcha. But I know I've noticed that that happening with quite a few promotions where it'll be like IWTV to like Fight to YouTube for a minute to back to one of the streaming platforms. So
New South and MLW have just been like following each other around.
Yes, exactly. But I'm all for like, I want all the platforms to succeed. I want all the companies to succeed. I want the wrestlers, everyone involved, the commentators, everyone to.
I wish more people had that outlook. I know there's a lot of clicks that kind of pop up, and it's well, I don't like these guys. I don't like these guys. I sincerely want like everyone in the Southeast to thrive. Like we all bring each other up.
Yeah, 100%. What are some other places that you want to work? I mean, I know obviously I'm sure you have like big long-term goals, but what would be some of your shorter term and maybe some of your longer term goals and commentary, in ring announcing, really anything?
Man, I've been fortunate enough to really branch out there. So far this year, I've done 40 shows so far this year. We're only 6 months in, and that's more shows than I did the entirety of last year. And I've gotten to work with, Terminus, Jonathan Gresham's promotion, Modern Grappling, Action, New South, TWE, all these places that I really love. Really trying to get out there more this year and travel around. Braden Toon and I are actually about to purchase some plane tickets here. He may have already purchased them, but to fly up to New Jersey next month. We're going to do a little loop up there in New Jersey and New York City, hopefully, and then come back down for a New South show. So looking to stay busy, but just off the top of my head, promotions like Wrestling Revolver, absolutely adore their product. Love what I'm seeing there. love to do more work with GCW. I've done some commentary and ring announcing for them. Would love to get out there more. I love what they're doing. Man, I just want to get out there on the road. I want to learn more. I want more experiences. I want to bring carloads with me. I want to, get those experiences with friends. Like, I love the Southeast. I love making those little 3-hour road trips, but it'd be nice to get out there a little bit more.
Very cool. You mentioned Terminus. I went to both of those shows as well. I think there's only been 2 so far, if I remember correctly. 3. Oh, there's right.
I was on the 3rd one.
That's right. There's been 3 Terminus. It's hard. It overlaps because I go to all the battle slams as well, and I know that's all Baron. Every time I ask, well, I know Jonathan, of course, with Terminus, but every time I ask Baron, I eventually just stopped asking him because I do these like quick, similar to GCW after Battle Slam. I go around and get some audio, and I always do an interview with Baron after the Battle Slam shows, and I eventually just stopped asking him because I was like, I'd always ask, so when's the next Terminus?
Yeah, man, I want to know the same thing.
and he always says, news is coming soon. And it's been like 6 months since the last time that he had any news. So I'm hoping.
I remember he hit me with the, hey, man, do you want to be our official ring announcer? I'm like, yes, absolutely. And I was like, when's the next show? He said, we're working on it.
Yes. Dude, they got a big task ahead. They're doing the Juneteenth, like the whole weekend in Centennial Park, which is going to be interesting. Man. I don't know like what hours they're running or exactly how that's going to work yet. Because what I'm assuming, I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming it'll be like outdoors or like a part of like the big like festival and everything going on out there. But I'm hoping to get out there at least one of the days. I know I'll have to work Friday and then Sunday is Father's Day, and that makes it tough because I'll be with family. But on Saturday, if they're running at the right time, I want to get out there and check it out because
dude, the talent that he brings in is absolutely incredible. I remember the Terminus show I did, like it was a who's who. It's the first time I worked with Ian Riccaboni and Dave Prazak, and then Konosuke Takeshita. Obviously John Gresham was on that show. It was stacked from top to bottom, man. Yeah,
good stuff. We were talking a little bit before we started recording about action figures and collecting and stuff. One of the questions we ask everybody is the coolest thing in your room. Before you get to the coolest thing, because I do want to know what that is. What's your what do you collect, and like where? I have like a legitimate sickness, I believe. Like I think that like something is actually wrong with me at this point. The problem is, and I'm going to sound like a kind of, this might not come across right, but because of my shoot job and because I'm single and I live pretty like modestly. Yeah. I have the expendable income to just spend on dumb stuff. So like when I see how it was with me. Right. So when I see stuff that I like, I just usually just buy it, but it's like this kind of stuff, like signed action figures, something that most people would see and be like, dude, you are just burning your money. What a waste of your time and money. How deep is it with you? And like, what are the things that you like to collect?
So originally it started off as, we did a couple of New South shows where we were bringing in some bigger names. And I was like, it'd be cool to have an action figure of like Rhino, or it'd be cool to have an action figure of Shark Boy, or whoever it may be. And it started off just as a shelf of people that I've worked with. And that quickly started growing, like the more shows I was on. And eventually I was like, okay, like this is getting to be too much. Like I worked Impact. Like I'm not going to get every single person on the show. Like, do I need a Matt Cardona and this and this and this and this? So I'm like, okay. So like the bigger shows, I'll get like the main event. Like I've got a Kenny Omega and a Rich Swann, like stuff like that. It started like that. And then eventually I'd be like, oh man, that Rob Van Dam figure is really cool. Yeah. Oh man, that Jeff Hardy figure is really cool. And it got out of control quick. And I had to pump the brakes. So a few months ago, I was like, I'm spending way too much money. I collected all of the first 5 series of the AEW figures. Yeah. And those are locked away, like hopefully, because I mean, when are you ever going to get on the ground floor of a new promotions toy line? Like,
oh, trust me, dude. I have the whole first series signed and loose. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. Yes, I'm with you. These are investments, people. This is
exactly.
Yes,
smart. financial geniuses.
Yes, stonks.
But
yes.
I had to pump the brakes, man. I'm like, I'm spending too much money on toys. Like they're just sitting on my shelf. Like I'm having, friends come over and they're looking like, how the hell do you have so many toys? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, this shelf is like all the people I've worked with. And what about this one? I'm like, no, I never worked with Brock Lesnar, but like, it looks cool.
Right. That's where it gets slippery. And I can tell you this from experience is when you start, because at first it's like, it starts small because it's just like, but it's all little justifications that lead to like bigger justifications. So first it starts off as like, I'm just going to like WCW figures. And it's
you
like,
have to adjust the rules.
Right. WCW and WWF. Well, maybe just this era. Well, maybe just this toy line. And then before you know it, you're surrounded by action figures and your friends think you're weird. Exactly. Just like you said. So now that said, is the coolest thing in your room an action figure? Because I would like to see some of your favorite figures if you can show them and or your favorite thing in your room.
Give me 10 seconds.
Oh, yes.
I'll be right back.
I will be here.
All right.
That was pretty close. That was probably right around 10 seconds for real.
I have completed my scavenger hunt.
Awesome. Let's see it.
I've got two things. One thing's wrestling related. The other is not.
Okay.
The first is a custom Carmen Michael ring announcing action figure.
That's dope. I love that. Who made you that?
It's actually a fan that had made the original one. I've made some adjustments to it. But sits on my shelf with all my people I've worked with.
I love that.
It's definitely not Rusev on a Triple H body.
Dude, that's very cool. So, and you said a fan gave you that, and then you just touched it up.
So the weird thing about being, I guess, in this like public eyes, like people bring me stuff. Like people just bring me Sting stuff all the time.
That's awesome.
Action figures, stickers, keychains. Like I had a fan. This bottle that I have right here, I had a fan bring it to me on my birthday for a New South show. It's just thoughtful, like bands that I listen to all over it. I'm like you pay attention to like what I'm posting online. This is cool.
Dude, that's very cool.
And speaking of music, my next thing, obviously, I've got the Linkin Park tattoo. Favorite band of all time. I got to meet Chester a few times before he passed away. And I remember I saw Linkin Park in Tampa, Florida, I believe, and was talking to Chester, and I finally was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I gave the whole spiel like, man, you're the reason I'm a musician. You're the reason I sing. I don't care what it takes. One day I'm going to sing with you. And he just looked at me and he looked back and went, I like that. Fast forward like a month and a half, 2 months later, he came to Birmingham with Stone Temple Pilots when he was singing with them. He looks over, let's see, 6 songs in, notices me, like does a double take and like storms across the stage, leans in with the microphone, and we both sing the chorus together.
Oh, wow.
And then after the show, he like jumps down. He's like giving high fives, hugging people. And he stops at me and he immediately just like grabs me. And I'm stunned for a second. And I was like, the other day in Tampa, and he just leaned back and smiled and said, I know. And he went and got me the set list.
Wow.
And got me a guitar pick.
Wow. Dude, you can't top that.
So that's the coolest thing in my room. It stays framed and on the wall. Doesn't matter what comes on and off. Also got a signed My Chemical Romance poster from my 13th birthday.
Nice.
That's different times, man. The last day of being 12 years old was at a My Chemical Romance concert by myself. Ended up winning meet and greet passes while I'm there. And I had to borrow someone's cell phone because I didn't have one of my own. Called my dad. I was like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm hanging out with the band. He's just like, okay. So,
wow.
Different times.
Wow.
But I got a poster signed by them and like Frank, their guitarist, like wrote me this big message, like for my 13th birthday and all this. So I got some cool stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. That's awesome, man. Yeah, I don't know if that can be topped. Is there anything else that you want the people to know about you before we wrap up?
Oh man, I feel like I'm pretty much an open book.
Yeah, well, let the people know where to find you. Social media. Do you have merch or anything out there?
Yes, I have a pro wrestling tee store currently. As far as social media, on Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Carmen M. Childers. For any promoters that are out there, my resume is the linked post on Twitter. So it's the first thing you see when you open up my profile. So take a look at that. Consider bringing me in a New South carload. That being said, follow New South on Twitter at @NewSouth_PW. I manage the YouTube channel, so also check that out. We got a lot of good content there, and just stay tuned. We got some big stuff coming up. We got GCW versus New South 2 on June 25th in Florence, Alabama. Tickets are available now. I know so far they've announced the new GCW champion, Blake Christian versus Locksmith Brandon Williams. Then also Rena and Sawyer versus Kinsey Page and Kylie Alexa. So, and we got some more bangers to be announced soon. But
yes, very much looking forward to all that. And we will have links in the description that y'all can see below to go support Carmen. Carmen, thank you again for joining me on the show today.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it so much.
Man, we appreciate it as well here at Fightful. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll be right back here on the Spotlight. Hey guys, I'm back. Hopefully y'all can see and hear me okay. Thank you again to Carmen for joining the show, and thank you again to SP3 for filling in for Jeremy. Once again, for everybody who may have missed it or came in during the interview, please put your thoughts, prayers, good vibes, like whatever out there helps for Jeremy. He lost his father this week, and love you, dude. I know you'll probably see this eventually. Jeremy, if you need anything, I know I've told you, just let me know. But I also know there's nothing I can really say or do that's going to make this any better. Like, I know this is something that, as someone who's lost a parent myself in the past, it's rough. It's very rough, and it's a process. And I'm here for you. You got a lot of support, a lot of people here for you, and we really appreciate you, man, and everything you do here at Fightful, and for us just as people. You're a great dude, great family. I was happy that I got to meet your dad at your wedding. Thank you to everybody who watched today. Y'all can follow me on Twitter at @FightTalk_. You can use code FightTalk on IndependentWrestling.tv. And yeah, we'll be back here next week. I'm not sure with what's going on, like if Jeremy will be here next week with me, if it'll be like solo interviews or how exactly next week's going to go. But I do plan on bringing y'all an episode of the Spotlight on Thursday morning, whether it be at 8:30 a.m. Eastern or 9:30 a.m. Eastern. So please keep a lookout on my social media. I'll do my best to let you know as fast as I can on when the show will be happening. And if Jeremy will be there, or if, I'll need to fill in, if SP3 will be back with me, or how we'll do that, but we'll get it all figured out as we go. But what's most important is that Jeremy spends the time he needs to with his family, getting things figured out and all that stuff. So no rush on any of that. Want everyone to know that right off the top, like however much time he needs, I'm absolutely totally cool with what's going on as far as the time he needs. So we'll get it all figured out with the Spotlight, but that is much more important. Real life stuff, family stuff always should come before professional wrestling and talking about professional wrestling. So thank you again to Carmen for joining the show. I see you in the chat. Thank you very much, man. That was a great conversation. And thank you all very much for watching the show today. Really appreciate it. Once again, we started at 8:30 Eastern today, which was not really announced until the middle of the night last night because I was getting the show prepared. So that said, I appreciate y'all. Please keep Jeremy in your thoughts, keep his family in your thoughts, and y'all have a great Thursday. Have a great weekend. Y'all will hear me next on the Fightful Select Weekender podcast. I don't know if that'll be on Sunday or Monday. And the only reason it's been flopping, by the way, for people who listen, is because they've been running a lot of really good shows on Sunday nights recently. And sometimes I feel like I have to wait until those shows to record my show. So I won't be able to do it till Monday sometimes. And because I work a shoot job, sometimes I can't do it till Monday night. So it's one of those things where I try to get y'all the Weekender every Sunday, but if I can't get it to you Sunday, I'll make sure to get you by Monday. So subscribe to FightfulSelect.com. We appreciate that a lot. That's how, a lot of us get paid by Fightful. Full transparency is because of those subscriptions over there to Fightful Select. And please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button right here on the channel. Thumbs ups, comments, all that kind of stuff really helps the channel, helps the algorithm, all that good stuff. I won't keep rambling. I appreciate y'all. I'm already late for my shoot job, so I'm going to go do that for the next 9 hours. Y'all have a great weekend. See ya.